All right. There will be bourbon with Steven Schultze. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing quite well. Yourself? Oh, you're drinking that, I guess. So I had to make sure I came properly. I Yesterday was 700 days
Yeah, I'm about to
or
say you're in the sober club now.
100
Good for
weeks.
you. Eggnog, yes. That's
So
what I'm
I just want
talking
to
about.
make sure I was representing
Hell
correctly.
yeah. All right. Team Eggnog is strong.
Very
And
strong.
speaking of which, we'll get into Steven here and what he's done since his service in the Army. Now an author, joining the club of authors in our expanding circle, which is pretty awesome. But as always, tonight's discussion will be fueled for me, not Steve. He's a eggnogger tonight. But America's Native Spirit, one that I just found again on my recent travels to Tennessee. Haven't had this one on the show before. Old Forester, their single barrel, blue label. You can always find it. It's not age stated. Most estimates are between 4 to 6 years, and this is barrel proof. It is strong. It's coming in a little over 132 proof. And the interesting thing about this is Old Forester introduced this. I want to say it was either just before COVID or it might have been the COVID year or it might have been 2021. I don't know. I just remember it showed up. It was about $50 everywhere. It was absolutely delicious. And since then, the price has doubled, but they're still there. Most of your liquor stores are doing store picks on them. So if you do see it, grab it. And that's what I will be imbibing on as well tonight. All right. Now that we got that out of the way, what's going on here? I got some new update with Zoom and it's flashing up on my screen. Look at that. Like a pro. All right, Steven. So no shit. There you were.
In the middle of
96.
the
This
desert.
is yeah. So this is interesting, maybe, because you joined in 96. So what made you join the army?
Uh, so this is the best part about my story. Everybody's, recent folks. All right. Well, 9/11 happened or
Right.
my brother deployed.
That's me. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I joined because of a significant emotional event. Me and my girlfriend broke up in high school. It was my senior year, and I
Congratulations.
I was a student who was prepared to graduate, not prepared to do anything else. So she basically talked trash. Well, what are you going to do without me? And I said, well, I'm going to join the army. And she said, no, you're not. And 23 years later, I retired. So that was March 26th of 96. Yes, I joined because of a significant emotional event. I have seen her since I joined the army, and
Okay.
I will be honest with you, it was a blessing in disguise.
Dodge the bullet.
Oh
Dodge,
yes, oh yes.
dodge the bullet. So obviously, it's one thing to say, all right, watch this, I'm a join, but it's another thing to go 23 years as you did. So why'd you stick around?
I think the best piece of advice I ever got while I was in was, the day it's time to hang it up.
Oh
And
yeah, I say it every day.
for whatever reason, that day never showed up until
Oh,
I
that's
was in
good.
for a long time. And so when I first joined, I was high speed, right? So I'm a kid out of California.
Yeah.
Grew up in SoCal my entire life. And I had left for like scout trips. I'd gone to like Philmont and backpacking into Mexico and, done little stuff like that, but I'd never really been anywhere. Right. So, um, I joined and I took my original MOS. Back in the day, it was 27 Echo. It's since changed to 94 Alpha, but I was a missile system tech. I tell all the girls I was
Air
a rocket
defense and all that
scientist.
cool stuff.
Well, yeah, it was all
They fall
so.
into that.
You're talking about like toes. Back in
Yeah.
the day, it was Dragon.
Okay.
I was one of the first guys to work on ITAS and all that stuff. So, um, but the only reason why I took it, I was given two jobs. It was that or cryptographic linguist, and I only took the missile system job because it came with airborne school. So I'm
There
like,
you
I'm gonna
go.
go through science.
Exactly.
So
Love it.
that's how I ended up there. How successful I would have been on the other side of the world, I'm not really sure. But
Yeah.
so I went to Bragg and was high speed. And the common mantra was always your best duty station was your last one.
Yeah.
Mine stayed pretty consistent. Bragg was always and I never made it back. So I did my first 4 years. I left in 2000 and I never made it back to Bragg. So yeah, it was. I just never hit the point where it was time to hang it up. And then when I did hit that point, there was no. I mean, I dropped my packet minutes. So
Yeah. Which we'll get to if you're cool with
oh
because
yeah, yeah,
we overlap, not necessarily, well, I guess a little bit in
we
time
do a little
wise,
bit.
but
We do.
we
There's
we
definitely
we
some overlap.
overlap in that last command. So I'm curious about your takes on a lot of it.
Got it.
Um, but yeah, so you left Bragg in 2000
2000.
and you
Went to
went
Fort
first
Carson.
armors oh, you went to Carson. Okay.
Yeah,
Oh,
and
third ACR. All right. First armor was in, so were they over in Germany at that time when you went? So,
yeah, First Armor Division was still in Germany.
okay.
Third ACR. So they did the Texas to Colorado, the Texas flip like five times.
Yeah.
The period that I was there, they were in Colorado Springs. It was a cool spot to be.
Sounds like it. Everyone's always talked pretty highly of Fort Carson. Scenery wise, I don't know how about the actual.
It's different. It definitely catches you for a surprise because you don't realize the elevation you're at. So you go run
Yeah.
your first PT test, you realize, well, I have no lungs.
Yeah.
Um, but that's where I was when 9/11 happened.
Oh shit.
And
Okay.
so now, so here's the crazy part about 9/11. In 2001, there was a thing called Operation Bright Star, and it
Mhm.
happens every other year. And
So
I
we're in
think
Egypt,
COVID,
wasn't
it is, yeah.
it?
So it paused for a while, but it was like the multi forces Sinai thing
Yeah.
where they do a
Yeah.
big training exercise with all the governments out there. So we were getting ready for that. The first plane hit when I was in the barracks. The second plane hit while I was standing in line at SRP to go to Egypt. So we're literally in the middle of getting shots and whatever on
And
Fort Carson
they got the
SRP.
news on inside
They
the
got
other
the news
building.
on it. So that's how we knew the second one happened.
Damn. And
So
how old are you?
yeah,
What are you
I
like
am
22?
46. 46. At the
No,
time,
no, no.
I
At the
was,
time.
how old was I then? I
Yeah,
was
you gotta be 22, right? Or
22, 20, yeah,
or
somewhere in that ballpark. So I was born in 78. So I just turned 23 probably.
okay. Yeah,
Um, so every shit breaks, right?
yeah.
So they closed down post and took 8 hours to get on post and all that
Yeah.
craziness that ensued. And then we went to Egypt. We took live rounds, which I don't believe was supposed to happen. We originally, but we go, we do the training, exercise like everything was normal. And we listened to us bombing Afghanistan on the BBC radio. And so that was weird all on its own. So when people have their like experiences about what happened on 9/11, and
Yeah.
they're all over the map. Mine was kind of weird because we were already headed that direction, and we just got lucky that we didn't get diverted to go do some other stuff. So,
Right.
but yeah, that was my experience at Fort Carson, which was, and I was only there 2 years, and then that's when I got orders to Germany. But Fort Carson is a great place if you like outdoors. If you are an indoors person, do
Not
not
for you,
go to
yeah.
Fort Carson. There is nothing for you there. But if you like the outdoors, I don't know if there's a better place in the country.
Yeah, that's what I had a buddy out in the first recruiting stop. That's where he went. Or that's where he came from. And then as soon as he retired, he immediately went back there. He loved it. Like, I don't know. I started really falling in love with the mountains once I got to California because I grew up, spent most of my life in Florida. We don't see those. But
Right.
then when
You
I
guys
got
have
to
hills,
northern,
not mountains.
yeah, yeah. So when I got to Northern California, I was like, oh wow, it's hour and a half to Lake Tahoe, and you're up there in the Sierra Nevadas and also, I get it. I would have loved to have seen Carson. Hasn't
It,
happened.
it's the smell gets you.
The
It
smell.
just smells. Yeah, it's something. And I mean, we're not talking about motor pool smells, but you smell like you're outdoors there. I mean,
Okay.
it
Yeah.
smells. I
Sugar
mean, and especially
pine and all that
coming
good
from
stuff. Yeah.
California, and then
Yeah, I
I
was
mean,
gonna
previous to that, I was in
yeah.
Fayetteville.
Okay.
It's what I mean. Yeah, you get the pine tree and the humidity
Yeah.
at Bragg, but I refuse to call it the other name.
No, yeah,
And
I know.
but you get to Carson and you feel like you're outdoors all the time. So yeah,
So,
it's a good spot.
and we'll get to the book, but you say Riverside here in the, is that where are you from Southern California?
I am from SoCal,
Okay.
so there is a
You got
scene.
mountains too, but a little different.
Yeah, so I think San Gorgonio is the largest peak in SoCal, and I think last time I heard it was 11,501. I think is the actual elevation. So it's tall for where you start, but it's not
Yeah.
necessarily the tallest area.
What's the tallest at Carson? Or in that area?
Oh, well, if I remember right, I think the post is at 7,200, and then you still got to get up Pikes Peak. So I'm
Yeah.
not really sure what it is. Pike Peak is 14 or something in it.
Oh
I mean,
wow.
it's up
Yeah,
there.
that's some stuff.
Um, so yeah, but it's very, very different. And if you've ever been to SoCal, the
Mm.
town that I grew up in is called Yucaipa. And it's nestled up against the mountains. So we're at the foothills of Mount San Antonio, Mount San Bernardino. Um, you're within about 20 minutes of two different ways to get to Big Bear, basically. You can go up
Yeah, and
one
that's where
side.
my brother is close by. He's in Rancho Cucamonga and Big Bear.
Okay.
We go
So
up to
yeah,
Big Bear a lot. Yeah.
that's the area where my old recruiters
Okay.
are. So
Cool. Cool.
but we're close enough in like a good enough spot where you could legitimately go surf in the morning, go snowboard in the afternoon, and then go
Yeah.
ride dirt bikes in the desert. I mean, you're right there with everything.
That's what's
So,
crazy. Yeah, that is crazy.
it was always weird because I mean, everywhere you go was clicky, but it was even
Yeah.
extra clicky because you had the guys who still drove the 2 hours to go do the beach stuff, or you had the people who hit
Yeah.
the mountains, or you had the people who did all the stuff out
Yeah.
in Glamis and whatnot.
Yeah.
So there's so much to do, and there's a scene in the book. I know we'll get to it, but it's literally the apartment I remember growing up in. Little tiny, I don't even know what it cost to rent the thing, but little tiny in this little tiny town, and we were far enough away from the freeway that We always joked because the town next to us, Calamasa,
Hmm.
got a McDonald's and we got excited because we had nothing.
That's good.
We had a Del
And no In and
Taco.
Out, nothing, nothing, no,
There's
no Del
none of that.
Taco, nothing.
And because it's not close to the freeway, and if
Yeah,
you've
so
been to
nobody's gonna get off of it.
SoCal,
Yeah,
it's hard to know when you're changing towns when you're on the freeway.
yeah,
Well, for us, you had to drive a few miles off the freeway, and since then it has grown up to the freeway, but it's
yeah,
still not. You go to like LA, it's everything's right off the freeway. That's not
yeah.
how I grew up, so it's a little
No,
different.
that's true. That's a good point because, like I said, I spent, I moved to Florida when I was 5, and I basically grew up there. And my experience with California was and I didn't realize this until I got to Northern California, that growing up on the East Coast, California to everybody else is literally LA. That's all anyone thinks about. So
Well,
from
that
movies,
was
Hollywood, like the Dodgers, who I hated, even though I was a Giants fan, I knew San Francisco, but I didn't have any concept of what that was. My concept of California growing up was LA, beaches.
I
You
remember
don't
going to
realize
basic training.
until, yeah, you don't, but you also don't realize that, like you just said, mountains, snow, desert, be all of it within like a quick
All of
drive,
it.
really.
Yeah.
Like it's crazy. And even up in Northern California, you can do the same thing. You get to Tahoe, you go see the snow, go do the mountain thing, go do the lake, go out to the actual coast, do the ocean, get
Yeah.
up into the redwoods. Like there's just California is wild to me just about how big that state is.
It's not even just that it's big, that I mean it is huge, but it's not the same. When you talk to people about what Oregon looks like,
Yeah.
Oregon is Oregon.
Yeah.
Nebraska is Nebraska.
Yeah.
California is like 15 different terrains all mixed
Yeah.
together. So it's definitely different. And one of the things about growing up in California that was weird is when you go, like I went to basic training. I remember we had this drill sergeant, his name was Drill Sergeant Danko, gigantic, humongous human of a, where are you from? Don't go tell him you're from Yucaipa, California. He has no idea where this. So everybody was from LA, or
Yeah.
I'm from Orlando, or I'm from New
Yeah.
York
That's
City.
it.
None of them were from there, but that's but they also don't realize that as soon as you get out of the grapevine on 5 and you enter LA,
Yes.
it's
Yeah.
concrete for the next 4 hours.
I know. That's wild.
So
Yeah. That grapevine.
um,
Do you ever see, and I know they talked about this recently on a Joe Rogan thing, but I've looked it up, especially you probably know, living in Southern California. Do you realize like all of like Central California was this giant lake at one point and not that long ago?
I don't think people in SoCal or in people in Northern California realize how much farmland is in the middle of that state.
Now, for sure. But
It's
the
yeah.
fact that there was a
So
giant fucking lake for like more than half of that state really not that long ago, and it's just gone.
there is there's a part of the book where I describe the Salton Sea and what it was
Okay.
like during the 60s. And it's crazy how fast it has
Yeah.
changed.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't until you go, you don't understand. And the other thing is when you talk about small town stuff, like people
Yep.
who live up in Northern California, I tell you, Northern California, you're going to either think Redding, which is middle of nowhere,
Way up
basically
there. Yeah.
all
That's way
yeah,
up.
it's all trees and whatever.
Needles and
There's
shit.
that, or you
Yeah.
think San Francisco, you
Yeah.
don't think of any of the other stuff. And I think that when you talk about, I'm a big music guy.
Yep.
You talk about Corn being from the middle of nowhere, Bakersfield. People don't
Yeah,
get it.
exactly.
What do you mean
Bakersfield.
they're from the like?
And
There's
I've gone to
nothing there.
Bakersfield. There's really, you're right. There's a, is it Clint Black? It's a famous country star. I don't know if it's Clint Black, but somebody from that era. Maybe it's Dwight Yoakam. One of those guys I think is from Bakersfield as well.
There's
Bakersfield's
nothing.
produced some really random fucking musicians, and they're like you said, there is nothing there but really
There's
sketchy
nothing to
material.
get there, and there's nothing when you leave
Just
there.
on
It's
your
the same
way.
as Sacramento. Sacramento is
Yeah.
literally plopped in the middle, and there's nothing, right? So, yeah, being in SoCal, until somebody goes, I don't think you can really appreciate like how varied the place is, and
Yeah.
not only that, but the whole place isn't Hollywood, paparazzi style living. Now, listen, there's a lot of that in SoCal, but like one of the biggest things we had in my high school was FFA. How many
Yeah.
SoCal people have FFA? And
Yeah.
so until you go there and you actually see all these little pockets of different stuff, everybody just assumes it's all LA, and it's not. But you did bring up the Doyers. I am not. My brother is a Dodgers fan. The apartment that is described in Yucaipa, California, in my book, I remember in 1998 weeping openly in front of my brother, who's a huge Dodger fan, because Kirk fucking Gibson
Yeah,
hit
I
a
remember watching
backdoor
that shit.
curveball off of
Yeah.
Dennis Eckersley, and
Yeah.
I grew up an A's fan.
Yeah, everybody. I think a lot of people love the A's, especially in the 80s because they were so
Well,
good.
that was all the you had the three
Yeah.
rookies of the year, all back to
Yeah.
back to back, and Walt
Everyone
White's doing all his
Walt
crazy
White, yeah,
stuff.
Carney Langsford, fucking Dave Stewart, Canseco,
So
obviously McGuire. Like, yeah, that whole fucking team was amazing, man.
well, then you had Eckersley and
Yeah.
Stewart. Those guys were
Yeah.
phenomenal. Three World Series in a row,
Yeah.
only won one of them. But the against sorry, um, I didn't become an I'm an Angels fan now, but
Earthquake, the earthquake. I blame it on the earthquake.
I didn't become an Angels fan until I got married to my wife.
My brother's an Angels fan now because he moved. He's lived
So
out in Southern California since for 20 some
well,
years.
it was
Yeah.
the closest to us was going to
Yeah.
Angel games,
No,
but I
that's
was
cool. No,
never.
I get it. I'm so glad that you stuck to those guns and you didn't sell out to the Dodgers. Can't.
No, I couldn't do it.
Oh,
Now
fuck.
I've been
I
to
hate
one
them even
Dodger
more
game in my
now.
entire life. We in uniform, we did the flag during a playoff game a few years back. Well, it's been several years back now, but they against the Braves. And I got to, and that was only because they let us do the flag on the field. But other than that, I would have never seen the parking lot of that place.
No, I don't.
Not a
Yeah.
fan of the Dodgers.
No. So real quick. So I looked this up. So country stars from Bakersfield, Buck Owens and Merle Haggard. So those two are both from there.
Merle Haggard's the bomb.
Yeah. They've, it's weird. Bakersfield has produced a ton of musicians, like a ton of them. There's
But
just
go there. There's a reason why they were trying to be into music because there was nothing else to be in.
yeah, but that's
I mean,
what's
that was
wild.
it.
Like, what was it like though? It must have been like I'm trying to figure out like what was Bakersfield 70 years ago, right? In the 50s. It must have been something. It must have been
It
like a bridge between LA and San Francisco, maybe. I don't know, but
I
there's
be honest
something
with
going
you,
on there.
it had to be the gas stations. I mean, you
Was it
think
off
if you're going up
off the
LA,
highway? Yeah.
that's I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know, I have any other idea why it would be there.
Yeah.
Um,
And Los Banos.
a little farm hub, but I don't
Yeah. Yeah.
it's produced a lot of stuff, but it's because everybody's trying to get the hell out of there for
Yeah.
sure.
And then it's also to go back to something you said, you mentioned the small towns. Like, yes, there's a lot of small towns in Southern California, but that's what I really noticed about getting into Northern California and the history of it, the gold rush, but all those small towns like up in Northern California. Once you start getting past El Dorado Hills and you get out going up towards like the gold areas as you get into the wine country, the Sierra Nevadas and the foothills up there, Apple Hill, all that stuff. Those small towns are wild, man. Like their history,
And
violent. Like, you got Hangtown when you start driving up to on
it's
65. If you drive up, or no, actually it's on 80. If you drive up to Tahoe, you'll go by Hangtown. Like literally, they got someone still hanging in an epithet, hanging out in the middle of the town. Like they used to just fucking hang people there. Like this.
the thing about those towns though is, and it doesn't matter. It could be 50 years ago, it'd be 80 years ago. They all have the same personality.
Yeah.
It's and I think it's one of those they found a niche that worked and they just stuck to it because it's what separated them from the neighbors, I
Yeah.
guess. But
Yeah.
yeah, there's definitely little pieces, and then you get SoCal and everything is so blended. It's
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
if you
And it's gotten very different since the COVID kind of changed all of SoCal, I think. Not in a good
well,
way.
you go down the 60 into like Diamond Bar and stuff, and I don't think you would realize that you're changing towns except for I mean now they have a huge Koreatown down there,
Mhm.
and I don't think you would notice you were even getting into Diamond Bar if the language of the signs didn't change.
Yeah.
It's just all concrete, and so
Yeah, that is wild.
it's very, very, very different. But where
How
I
did,
grew up it was kind of nestled up in the hills. We're still a town. Everybody called us Hicks, but it wasn't big. It's definitely more California-ish now.
yeah.
30 years on or
Yeah.
25 plus years on. So
I love the state of California. Obviously, the government issues that I have problems with, but I think that's what I like so much about the smaller areas in Southern California. And then, honestly, everything in Northern California, as long as you're north of San Francisco and for the most part Sacramento, like
it's gorgeous country up there.
it's gorgeous, but there's just those people they're self-reliant and they are not the people that would ever like they won't turn their back on you, but they're also the people you don't ever want to cross.
But on the same token, as if you told somebody from Florida and
Yeah.
said, what do you think of California people? Not one time out of 1,000 would somebody describe that.
Yeah, well, that's why I
It's
said
just,
like
yeah, it's
me
just
growing up
not
in
it.
Florida, my perception of California was this is LA, the beaches.
Yeah.
That's all you knew.
I
Maybe
mean,
San Diego
our
if you
drill
kind
sergeants
of
at Fort Sill legitimately thought, "Oh, you're from Hollywood." No, I'm nowhere
Yeah,
from there, but
exactly. Yeah, right.
it is what
And
it
then
is.
Florida is very similar in a way. It's just not as it's not elongated. It obviously curves over, but I mean, northern western panhandle Florida is not central Florida. It's not southern Florida. Like those are all very different areas.
I
Just like
think
California's got very different people in every section.
one of my favorite pieces of random trivia is there is a section of Florida and a section of Oregon that are only one time zone apart.
What?
Go look it up on a time zone chart. If the far west side of Florida and one section on the east side of Oregon are literally one time
So
zone
one
apart.
is mountain and one is
Yep.
central.
Yep.
That's fucking. I'm gonna go down that rabbit hole tonight. That's wild. Where the hell did you come up with that?
I mean, the Twitter, of course, that's
Of
where all
course,
the
yeah,
weird crap comes from nowadays.
where that's our home. That's where we live.
Yeah.
That's where we dwell. I saw you were in First Armor Division though, from '02 to '07. Did you go OIF two with them
So I deployed. It was funny. We left on Mother's Day of 2003
to go or to?
to go.
Okay, so we would have been
So
hanging out together. We've been hanging out in Biap together, man. Probably somewhere.
probably.
Yeah.
So we and then I was part of the crew that in 2004 got stuck. Now, so I
We
was in First Brigade. Now the weird thing about First Brigade was we put a bunch of people on a plane and we sent them back to Germany. And then they
uh,
said, "Oh wait, we're being extended," and we brought them all back. So they got like one party day and they all returned. And then we went down
yeah,
to
we were on
Carval.
the convoy with your MPs going home, and they sent them all around back. It was
Yep.
a short haul that went from 1 day to 7, and they sent the MP escort we had from Camp Cedar 2 back to Baghdad, and we went home because we were
Yep.
reserves. But yeah, those guys had a bad trip from what I remember. Going,
Well, so we deployed
they went
Mother's Day
back
was
through
what?
Nasiriyah and had a bad time with
Yeah,
the guy who ended up
we
becoming the president of Iraq.
yeah.
Solder, fucking
So that was our first deployment, and it
yeah,
was kind of weird because we at the time it was the longest deployment since World War II.
yeah,
That is long expired, but
yep.
so First Brigade, I was in Freeburg, same place as Elvis. So my first two deployments were there. Um, that was the first one. The second one we started in Talifar, drove down to Ramadi. We were in Ramadi from like January-ish '06, or some of us were through February '07.
Were you there with
Um,
Braxton?
no, so I would have gotten, because I believe his day is the 5th of January off the top of my head. I
Yeah, I
would have
think
gotten
so.
there several weeks later.
Okay.
But there's a portion in the beginning of his book where he's describing all of the um, speed bumps that the sergeant majors decided had to be between the aid
Yeah.
station and the gate and all this other craziness.
Yeah.
That's all a true story. Um, it angered us then. It angered them when he was there.
It's pretty wild
But
when you think about what they fucking had to go through because
so
of some
stupid.
fucking sergeant major was like, "Where you
There
going?"
were sergeant majors when we were in Mahdi thought there was high time for us to start wearing berets. And we were like, you've
Oh,
lost your mind. But Charlie Med and the helipad were right across the street from where I stayed. And then my office
yeah.
was there. At that point, I was doing operation stuff. I wasn't doing missile system stuff. But so First Armor Division now move on to 2007. They decide, hey, we're sending everybody to Bliss. That's where First Armor Division is going to go. I got attached to 237, which was in Gießen, and I stayed there and closed down Freiburg. And I actually got to toss the keys to the Pons guards as we were leaving, so I can quote
Nice.
unquote say I was the last guy. Um, but that was, and I don't even know if they've even touched Freiburg since then. But that was a great place to be because what are we, 11-minute train ride or something like that from Frankfurt? Like, can't beat that. So yeah, we had a really really good time.
So you were shutting down spot. So this was '05 or
This
06?
was '07. '07.
Yeah, no, you're right. Because so I did an AT over in Hanau. In Hanau.
Okay, so they sent a lot of
Yeah.
our guys to Hanau. Reason
Okay.
why we liked Hanau, that's where Popeyes and Taco Bell was at.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we used
Stay
to
away.
have to go to the PX just so. I mean,
Yeah.
there's people who used to get in trouble all the time because they would take their Humvee onto that casino and go through the drive-throughs, and
That's awesome.
we were idiots. But yeah, so that was a cool spot to be. Elvis's chair, I believe Elvis's chair is still there. They didn't take it, as far as I know.
Hmm.
When I was getting ready to leave, it was still in the barber shop.
Oh shit.
But yeah, so all the pictures you see him, it was still there, and they had a little rope around it, like a little velvet rope. It's Elvis's chair. And
Yeah.
Freiburg
I
itself
know if I
still
saw
loves
it.
Elvis. It's
Like
like
Yeah. So the what I remember most about Hannah in '07 was obviously they were closing the base. I just remember the Class 6 was having their like closing sale. And
Get rid of it all.
yeah, the Johnny Walker Black, I remember getting a bottle for my brother and my dad for Christmas because they were on sale like 80% off. It's
I mean,
like,
that's not a bad deal.
no,
That's not a
it's
bad
not.
deal.
Because no one buys that stuff anyway, right? That's why I always love when I go to PXs and the Class 6s and I'm like, even like where I go now, at like if I go to Greg Adams, the old Fort Lee, and I look, okay, you guys have a bottle of Louis the 13th cognac in here. Who's buying a $1,400 bottle? Right? Like, it's
So
just like, but this is
when
here. It's just,
when I came back from Iraq, I was still drinking at that point, but when I came back from Ramadi, um, I was going through. I had just gotten divorced, which was magical, and so
not from
I
the high school girl.
no, not from her. It was this was I got married to an army girl. I made other mistakes.
We
Um,
all did. All right, good job.
so I bought a 25-year bottle of Macallan.
Yeah, I've done that in Vegas, unfortunately. My
I
first
don't know if
re-enlistment.
I think I got two fingers of it for like $58 in Vegas. I don't know what a bottle would cost. That's insane. That's the most expensive bottle of liquor I've ever purchased, but it was amazing.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
25-year Macallan's very great. That's good
yeah,
stuff right there,
yeah.
man.
If you got the ducats for it, but
Yeah,
um,
when you're living that life, you don't really think about it. You're just glad that you have it in the moment.
being in Germany though, it's all about the liquid bread. Okay, it's the
Yes, the
beer,
beer is fucking incredible, man. Like,
and even the bad stuff is amazing.
right?
So
Well, and like, what always blew my mind about being there. So I did two annual trainings there. I did Hanau and I did Stuttgart. Stuttgart was the first time I really, because we had, I think I've told this before on here, but there was one of the local wineries had a little kiosk on the post outside of the barracks we stayed in. And this little German girl, she's probably like 22, 23, beautiful girl, right? And me and my buddy, we're same age, I think 23, 24 at the time or whatever. And this girl liked me. So this was fun. So we would go down there every night and she would just feed us Riesling for free, just getting hammered off of Riesling. And I still remember it was in like this blue looking bottle. And I remember weeks later coming back to the States and seeing it in a liquor store. I'm like, oh shit, that's that wine. And I can't remember this girl's name to save my life, but she would just give us whatever we wanted. And it was amazing. And that
so
was when I really started liking wine. And I just still remember, like to this day, if I ever have Riesling, I'm like, oh, I wonder what that blonde chick's up to. If she's still on base at like 44 years old or some shit, selling the privates.
we all have that one we can't remember their name. When I was coming back from Operation Bright Star, we got stuck. It was crazy. I was the first plane to leave, and I
Mhm.
was the last plane to arrive at Carson 9 days later,
Nice.
something like that.
Nice.
And so we were escorting a satellite back, which was our whole role. It was stupid. It was just sitting on a C5. And that was our whole job.
Mhm.
We got stuck at Rhine Ordnance Barracks, and they have a little cantina there, whatever you want to call it. And they finally said, we got there stuck so long. I think the first day it was like, no, you guys can't do anything. And then the second day it was like, if you guys want to go somewhere, we'll get you guys a 15-pack van. You guys can drive around.
Yes.
Some people just stayed on Rhine Ordnance Barracks because you don't want to go drive around with all the drunk people because they were getting lit. So we go to this cantina and we're drinking beer like, oh, I drink beer. I could drink a 6-pack. You can't drink a 6-pack of German beer, having never had it before.
No, you cannot.
Yeah, so you're smelling colors and yeah, it
Yeah.
was bad. And the Rhinenor's barracks is just for people who don't know. They have a pack shed and it's literally cots in rows and it's concrete floors and it's a big open room.
That's beautiful.
And I mean, it was got to the point where they're like, okay, you guys aren't allowed to drink anymore because the whole room smelled like everybody's evening because people were getting sick and like, because I can handle my alcohol. No, you can't. No, you can't.
That's
So then I go there and I started getting into, you start getting the Hefe and all that stuff. It's just,
yeah, that's what so I think the first time I went was Stuttgart. That was '05. And Franz Connor was the first one I ever had. And I brought a ton of that back with me. I remember putting them in my army socks to kind of like
uh,
pat them. Like that was the first German beer I ever brought back. And that one, still to this day, I still love. My brother knows a ton of German beers, and I can't remember that, but they're the Oktoberfest that come out are just absolutely incredible locally to get. Um, What was I just drinking? I was just down in Tennessee for Thanksgiving. I was just drinking a bunch of beer. Ah, damn, I already forgot the name of it. I just drank it 2 nights ago. Watch it after Gladiator. I watched Gladiator 2.
Good. Okay, you already said it. We're good. Don't even need to
It's
explain it
not bad.
now.
If there was no Gladiator 1, you'd be like, all right, this is pretty cool. But the fact, like, my only issue was the Denzel Washington character arc. I thought was just a little too implausible. Like the brothers, emperors, while it was like a real thing in history in Rome, it wasn't. You know how Hollywood is, man. They just
Yeah,
but the movie itself was fun. It was a good movie. It's worth watching. But as long as you don't try to hold it up to Gladiator 1, you
it's
know.
hard. Gladiator one's phenomenal.
It is.
That
And it
was when I
ties
finally
into this
decided
one.
that Joaquin Phoenix should never be anything but a villain. Was that movie
I just
because he's
remember shortly
phenomenal as a
after that,
villain.
there was like this long rumor that he died or some shit for some reason. Do you remember that?
I remember that, and then I remember, well, you know, the whole thing with his is his brother, right?
River Phoenix?
And
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
so
River.
River
Yeah,
Phoenix,
yeah,
and
yeah.
that all happened because of John Frusciante from the Red Hot Chili Peppers, and like there was all
Oh, is that where Under the Bridge comes from?
John brought the drugs to the thing. River got high when he was trying to leave, and that's when he ends up,
Oh
flatlining
shit.
and
I did
shit.
not know
So
that. That's
they
crazy.
were all connected to each other. But
Yeah.
he was also, if I remember right, wasn't he also in a movie? Was he to Perdition?
See, I
Was he?
remember the previews, but I don't think I ever
I
actually saw
remember Tom Hanks. I'm pretty
Perdition.
sure
Yeah,
he's the
Tom
bad guy
Hanks
from
is
Road to
in that.
Perdition too. He plays
Yeah,
the gangster's
I don't think
enforcer,
I
basically.
don't think Joaquin Phoenix has ever played a good guy.
I don't. He shouldn't. He's a phenomenal villain,
Or
phenomenal
not
villain.
one that I've ever watched. I really wanted to go see this latest Joker because of how bad it was. Because I knew it would be
I
bad.
heard it
So I
was
didn't go
bad.
see it. Well, I saw the first one. I thought the first one was atrocious. And the fact that they made a sequel, I was like, oh my God, this one has to be even worse, especially with Lady Gaga in it. I was like, oh, this is gonna be awful. I gotta go see. And then the review started coming in. I was like, I just want to go see it for how bad it is. Like that's where we're
Well,
at.
I was kind of surprised how many people
Because he's still great at
held,
acting.
how many people put that Joker on a pedestal. And
Him?
they're like, oh, he might have been better than Heath Ledger. Absolutely
No,
not.
absolutely
Don't
not.
even,
No,
that's
no.
sacrilege.
It is, and he's good. Don't get me wrong. It's like it's
Yeah,
not
but
his
it's
fault the
not
movie
the
sucks, but
same.
yeah, he's no. And that's the problem with getting so many individuals to do these things. Like I get it. Everyone would love to have the same person do the same thing over and over, but that's not people.
Anymore, I
That's
think
not
Hollywood
people,
tries to
right?
sell movies with the name on the poster than the acting in the movie. And so I think that's what ruins. Hey, come see this great guy playing a terrible character and horrible writing.
Yeah. Well, and that's the
It's
thing. Like I was just thinking about this because you go watch a movie, you get 45 minutes of fucking previews. And I'm sitting there, and my takeaway is like the movie was supposed to start at 12. I think it finally started at like 12:40. There's all these previews, and outside of Mission Impossible, the next Mission Impossible that's coming out, which I think looks amazing. The last one was incredible. Like these are Tom Hanks or Tom Cruise is like the only one still doing really great action movies in Hollywood right now. Um, but my big takeaway was A, there are no movie stars, male or female. And B, Hollywood for 2025 is bringing like full on degeneracy back. Like these movies are
yes.
fucking ridiculous that are coming out. It's just low rent, overkill murder bullshit with like psychotics everywhere or
What the
just
hell's the name of that Halloween-ish movie with the clown, the white and black painted clown? The thriller, the Twizzler, the what the hell is
oh
that?
shit, what
That's
is
all it
that?
is. It's
No,
just
I
like
saw
it's like
something.
return to 1980s gore is what it really is.
Yeah, so there's something
Um,
coming out called Sinners, which looks like an all black cast of maybe like maybe early last century religious weird shit going on. And like
yeah,
maybe it's a black town or something. But and then there's another one. Oh, I already forgot the name of it, but it was just like this guy who has a female, I guess, not robot, who's alive but not alive, and he's like torturing her but killing people. It's just, and I'm sitting there with my parents watching these previews, and my dad's just cracking up, making jokes like, "What the fuck is this?" I'm like, he's not wrong. Like, what are
it's
we making at this point?
it's either degeneracy or it's the exact same character. Like Have you
Yeah.
seen a Rock movie where he played two separate characters?
No, and I've honestly never saw a rock movie because I have no desire. Like,
And they're getting ready to come out with a live action Moana. I don't even think the other Moana's been out for 5 years yet, and they're already doing a
yeah,
live action version of it. It's like you have to come up with something, and it
yeah.
can't
Like, I
be
mean,
just
uh,
crap.
I think the last movie I saw in theaters was the Mission Impossible last year at some point.
I saw the first one. I have not seen a single one since.
Well, they've been good, but the one last year, like where we're at now, very, very good. Highly recommended.
How many are there at this point?
Couldn't tell you. At least five.
10? Oh,
Mhm.
there's got to be more
At
than that.
least, at
I'm
least five.
Googling. I'm Googling.
Well,
There's
Google it. But the
no
one
way.
from 23, very, very good. Worth seeing. And that's what he
Uh,
followed up Maverick with. And Maverick was by far, I think, one of the greatest movies ever.
are we talking about the Top Gun sequel?
Yeah.
Because that or it's the really bad Western.
No, no,
I
no,
I
no.
haven't seen it yet.
What?
If
What's
you'd asked
going
me
on?
if you'd asked me 10 or 12 years ago,
How have you not seen that?
who do you think is going to be the actor in Hollywood who is going to make good movies and have the longest run? Would
Tom
you have
Cruise?
picked Tom Cruise? I
Uh,
wouldn't have 10 years ago.
10 years ago? Probably not. But he is.
I mean, he
I mean,
is.
he's
And
doing it.
listen, mad respect for
He
that guy.
single-handedly saved Hollywood after COVID with Maverick.
That guy does his own stunts too, which is
I know. Well,
phenomenal.
there's a picture that they just showed of him doing a stunt from a previous Mission Impossible movie, and I'm just every time I watch it, I'm like, I don't know how the fuck that dude did that.
Well, he had the one where he's running building to building, doing the parkour stuff, and he broke his foot. And that's actually the cut that they left in the movie
Oh,
because it was the
really?
best one, but he couldn't do it again because he broke his foot. Then he did the one hanging off the plane, which is in the Halo jump, and like mad respect, the guy still does it. But I wouldn't have picked him. No slight to him, but I would definitely wouldn't have been like, oh, that's the
No, but
guy.
I would honestly if go back 10 years. I don't even know who's still doing anything of note.
There's eight of them. Eight of them.
Eight?
Yes, the first
Eight?
one was in
Oh, eight Mission
1996.
Impossible.
Eight Mission
Well, I remember.
Impossible.
Okay, 90. That's not eight. I mean, eight over 30 years. That's not bad.
That's not bad. To be able to successfully keep a franchise alive
Yeah,
without turning it
it's
into a
still him.
meme.
Like, think about
Like,
Bond. Think about how many Bonds we've had since 97 with Pierce Brosnan to now.
well, there's that, and then look at how many of them just became a meme. Nothing stronger than family. Fast and the Furious stuff. It's like you can only do it so many times.
See, Fast and Furious is funny because there's like 20 of those, and I've only seen one. And it was with my dad in high school, the very first one. Never seen another one since.
So here's a little known fact: the first one was the race wars, and the first one was filmed at Norton Air Force Base. It was Norton. Now it's San Bernardino International Airport. That's where Race Wars was filmed. And it's also the same place where they unveiled the stealth when they finally first acknowledged it was that same exact Air Force
Oh,
base.
shit.
Yeah, so that's right down the street from where I lived.
That's cool.
Yeah, but yeah, Hollywood's crazy nowadays. It's all the same regurgitated stuff. So yeah, don't take my not watching any Tom Cruise movies as anything other than
No,
I'm not so sure
I
I'm
would
going to
say
spend my
there's
money
not
on a
a
bunch of the same stuff.
yeah, there's not a lot to watch, but there, I mean, that, like I said, that last Mission Impossible, definitely worth it.
I'll put it on the list. I'll watch it this weekend, and I'll give you a report.
I appreciate that.
It'll
I
probably
am
blow me away,
curious.
probably.
I am curious because we did overlap in what I think is still a huge national security risk in our failure as an army to be able to recruit successfully. And I was just curious when you got into that world, what did you see? What did you think?
So for the viewers who don't know what we're talking about army recruiting.
Yes.
So I went over in 2011, and
Yep.
when I came over, it was right after the Houston. I don't know when you got there, but Houston.
2016. 2016.
Okay, so Houston, they had recruiters commit suicide, so that was the beginning of the get rid of toxic leadership.
Mm.
And so it was different because that was the point where they couldn't give us missions, like they couldn't individually give us
Right.
missions.
Yeah.
I mean, I had a really good station commander who I think he did a decent job of kind of show me the ropes and, showing how to shake hands, kiss babies kind of thing.
Yeah.
The problem, I think, in that period was the answer was throw money at everything. And to a point that's kind of continued, but um, if you couldn't convince them with 40 grand, you're not going to convince them with 120 grand.
Yeah, yeah.
And I don't think throwing money at it's always the answer. And so the other thing is there's a huge stigma for recruiters. And I feel bad
Oh,
for
especially
them.
back then. Yeah, I think
Oh yeah,
it was way
recruiters
worse.
lied to me. Recruiters lied to me. I think that was more of I made a decision and I don't want to take responsibility for it for a lot of people.
For sure.
Um, I
Absolutely.
don't think it's the same recruiting, 1981. Hey, do this and everything will be great. You go, but it doesn't work that way, and it didn't work then. I mean, the whole I went and they just told me what my job was after the fact. When I joined recruiting, that didn't exist. You knew what
Oh,
your
that's the
job was going to be
Marines.
before,
We know that.
yeah,
Like,
before you ever went to MEPS, you knew what that was.
yeah.
So there's that, and then there's a lot of political stuff that I think has kind of muddied up without getting too into it, but I think there's a lot of political stuff that muddied up the footprint that made it really hard for the Army as a whole to be able to see what their mission was. So, I mean, for one example is like DACA,
Yeah.
and SoCal DACA is a
It
huge
screws
thing.
a lot in California, period, especially NorCal, where I showed up at. Yeah, no, you're right. DACA was a huge thing.
So I would be briefing my sergeant major as a station commander, and they would be like, "Hey, your QMA, your quality market for seniors is
Uh-huh.
18,000." It's like, well, if you go to my school, you'd realize that 33% of that is DACA recipients. And so I can't put them into the Army. So the number that you think that we have isn't real.
Mhm.
And so we were handing out mission based on stuff that just wasn't realistic.
Right.
Um,
And real quick, DACA is deferred action for childhood arrivals for those who
yes.
aren't tracking that.
So
Which
people
means
that
they're
came across while
non-citizens.
they're children
While
under the
they're
age of 18.
right,
Yeah.
haven't made citizenship and all that good stuff.
So a lot of them have social security cards, but they're just in
Mhm.
legal limbo. And so you can't do anything for them, especially a place that has a high market for that
Yeah.
stuff.
You could
SoCal,
enlist them, but you couldn't ship them, right? Was that what it was?
no, we couldn't touch them at all. We
Okay.
weren't allowed to do anything with them. Um, but then it got into really weird stuff where we brought in the MAVNI program.
Mavni, that's what I'm thinking of. All right, which was
Yes,
military
MAVNI was mission.
ascensions vital to national interest,
There you
right?
go.
Yes. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's the one I'm thinking.
So that was
That's what
weird
really
because
screwed up California.
when it first happened, well, so the weird part was when they first came out, they said, okay, recruiting command gets 10 Chinese. So you can put in 10 guys that are Chinese. They had to have a specific kind of visa, and
Right.
there was some criteria to it.
Yep.
Well, hey, New York City gets 8 of them, and this you guys get 2. I am not even joking. I had an applicant. We said, listen, we can't put you in because we are out of slots. But if you fly to New York City, they have one. Got on a plane, was
That's
gone.
wild. Oh shit.
Not only that,
That's
but the
crazy.
Mavney community, there's one recruiter specifically who is very good in SoCal with Mavneys, and he rocked that market. And the thing with that community is if you did them wrong once,
Yep.
everybody knew.
Everybody
And
knows.
so don't make a mistake or explain something not quite clear enough because as soon as they thought that you did something wrong, your
Yeah.
name was mud and there was no
Yep.
recovering from that. And then we get into the stuff of, later on, we're talking 5 years later, these people are finishing their reserve contracts and they still didn't have the background investigations done because
Yeah. They
the
never
community
shipped.
that was supposed to go do the investigation on them
It's
didn't
fucking
complete the
wild.
background check because it wasn't their primary role, so they backburnered it. And so there's a lot of that muddies it, and it does
Mm.
no favors to people who are doing recruiting. And that doesn't even matter what service you're in; it's muddy all the way across the board.
Yeah.
And then obviously, listen, do I think that there were dirty recruiters that told fibs to their recruits? Absolutely. But anymore, it's so hard to do that. That it makes it nearly impossible. So, and then not only that, but then I switched worlds. So you were in
Yeah.
enlisted recruiting. I was
Yeah.
enlisted recruiting from 2011 to 2016. And then from 2016 until I retired, I did AMED recruiting. And that is a entirely different thing. I mean,
So for
you
those who
can
don't
do
know, what is AMED?
so our AMED is Army Medical Department.
Okay.
So you're putting in doctors, dentists,
Yeah.
medical students,
Guys with
veterinarians.
$300,000 bonuses.
I've seen some wild ones. But you're putting them in, and that the problem is with that is it's just not the same world.
Yeah.
And anybody who does any kind of statistics understands the rule of large numbers. There just isn't the amount of numbers to do the analytics on that side as there is on enlisted side, and so it's a lot more difficult to even understand your market. And so That was something I really listen. I had really successful times in California, and I failed miserably as a station commander as well while I was there. Like I'm not going to be I was amazing. I bombed for a period while I was in SoCal, and there was a lot of reasons. Not all of them were me, but it's a rough world to live in. And so when I flipped over to AMED, I'm like, oh, this is easy. Our mission's tiny. We can do whatever. Okay, now explain to me how my life as a doctor is going to be in the Army. But well, that's an entirely different set of recruiting skills you got to understand and
Because you have no concept.
programs.
You
And
have no idea. I
you
don't know
don't
how
know.
to be as a
And
doctor.
there's no analytics to just be like, okay, here is. And so for people who don't know, your recruiters, you can take it all the way down to I know you need to take 500 phone calls to have 10 people answer the phone to be able to make 2 appointments to be able to conduct one and get them to MEPS.
Yeah.
There's no analytics that spans that. You just the rule of large numbers doesn't exist on the medical side, so it's really difficult. And so, and then program knowledge is hard. There's just so many programs, but I think the recruiters we have today, I think they're doing really really good at what they're asked to do. Sometimes it's confusing, and sometimes they're just not prepared for it because it's you can't know it on day one. You just can't. You're going to learn as
Yeah.
baptism by fire.
Right.
And so they do a really good job of supporting each other and try to figure that part out. But it's a completely different world. So people always ask, which did you like? Did you like medical recruiting more? Or did you like enlisted recruiting? And they both have huge pros and cons. And being able to like analytically look at stuff is definitely a pro of the enlisted side. There's just enough people joining, you can see stuff. It just doesn't exist on the medical side as easily.
Yeah, I think that was my issue. And you tell me if you had a different experience because I don't know where you ended up at when you got out, but I remember, I went to PLDC, which is now BLC, right? It was like, oh, we're gonna teach you how to be a sergeant. And then I get there and I'm like, I didn't learn how to be a sergeant. I learned how to look up some stuff. Then I went to ANOC. Well, no, I'm sorry. Then I went to BNOC, right, which is now ALC,
ALC. Yeah.
right? Where I'm like, oh shit, I'm gonna learn how to be a squad leader.
No.
Oh, learn more regs, learn how to look some stuff up. Then I go to SLC. I was like, oh shit, I'm gonna learn how to be a platoon leader, platoon sergeant. Nope, didn't teach me how to do that. I learned how to do open rank inspection, which I already knew because I was a drill sergeant. Um, and then, you know, it's like we have these schools that give people the preconceived notion that they're going to learn how to do something. And same thing with recruiting. Went through recruiting. You went to the ARC, right?
Yeah.
I didn't learn how to be a recruiter. I learned AR 670 dash, or no, I learned AR 600 dash, what is it, 600 dash 20 or whatever the fuck 601 dash 210, right? Learned that.
And you
Didn't learn
spend two
anything
weeks
about,
of it on chapter 4, which is
yeah,
conviction
right.
waivers, right? So,
Right. Didn't learn anything about how to be a recruiter. Like they don't
um,
teach you that. Like well, here, craft your army story. Let's practice interviews. Let's do and then station commander course. Didn't learn how to be a station commander, just learned how to push waivers.
the thing for me about, um, I think it falls in the same line of the expectations you have when you join the army, right? Is you have these preconceived notions, and until you get into it, you don't know. And that's with anything. It doesn't have to be military related. I mean, you could start a brand new job and think, hey, I'm going to go work for Garmin and things are going to be amazing. And then
Yeah.
you get there, it's like, well, things aren't exactly how that works, right? So I think there's a lot of that. And the other side of it is it's a volume issue. There's so many people that get pushed through to be, whether it's recruiting school,
Drill sergeant school was
BLC.
exactly that. I mean, I watched a
It's
guy who couldn't execute a fucking about face while instructing it, and he
yeah,
graduated, and he went on to become a drill sergeant somewhere. Don't know where, but yeah,
it's
like we're so concerned with numbers, like you said, volume, as opposed to people who can actually execute it.
well, and then I think it's one of the, and you hear this excuse, and I know you heard it during ARC, was don't worry about that part. You'll learn that with your station commander. And then when you show up, you have to do this training program when you first get there. And
Yeah,
it covers like the recruiting functions and what you're supposed
right.
to do.
No, everyone checks the
Very basic level.
yeah,
But the problem is the
can't fail
market.
anybody out of it anyway, though.
No, because if you failed them out of it, it's because you failed as a
And you're not
trainer,
getting a
right? That's
replacement. So well, like
definitely not. So they they put it all back on this on the station, like your leadership there will teach you that part. Don't worry about it, you'll learn that part. And if you go to a successful station, it's fantastic because they generally
Yeah.
have the ability to teach you how to do it. But if they're failing and struggling, dude, welcome to the struggle fest.
Yeah.
And I feel bad because I had recruiters who showed up. I was running a 15-man station in SoCal,
Oh shit.
and I had 5 recruiters, myself plus 4. And they were like, "Hey, are you taking these guys?" Bro, I can't leave my office to go do anything because I'm chained to reports and whatnot. And how am I supposed to train this guy? And so I mean, I was in the office at 6 o'clock, and I had at the end of my time in enlisted recruiting, I had an amazing first sergeant who ended up being a sergeant major, and he understood my struggle. He knew I was giving it everything I had, but I wasn't succeeding by any metric, right? So, but he knew it wasn't I was failing because I was trying to fail or I wasn't working. I was in there, blood, sweat, and tears, and it just wasn't happening. And
Yep.
unfortunately, for some recruiters, you get thrown in the middle of that, and I don't know if you really recover from it.
No.
Leadership really does matter. People say, "Oh,
Yeah.
but you're on your own as a recruit." Leadership matters,
Yeah.
and unfortunately, at that time period, I'm completely willing to admit I was a terrible leader because I was trying to hold the place afloat, and I wasn't able to, teach, coach, mentor like I should have. I think that if I said, "Screw your slide deck, I'm going to go with my recruiters and do that," and just pushed it off, maybe we would have
Oh,
done
for
better.
sure.
Or maybe we would have just failed, but we would have failed together, right? I don't,
Yeah.
you don't know,
Yeah.
hindsight being
Most
2020.
likely. I mean,
Um, but then I got to AMED, and then it was like a completely different animal, and I was extremely successful there. So your situation matters, your leadership matters, and I had a good SAR major when I got to medical recruiting. He actually gave a damn. He also wasn't that guy. If I had an honest complaint about the Army, is we drag leaders through too many goalposts. And so if you remember back in the day, and they've changed it a little bit now, but you had your schoolhouse stuff, your
mhm.
PLDC or your BLC, ALC, but you also had your SSD, your online crap you had to do.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
We used to get a report every month, and it was, hey, this guy's not done with his SSDs, make him finish. Well, finishing those is a requirement to get promoted. If you don't want to get promoted, why am I helping you? Because all you're going to do is get promoted to a position you didn't seem like you wanted anyways. And that's the leadership you're going to provide to your guys.
Get up or get out. Yeah.
And so to me, it was very much I think we kind of stubbed our own toe doing
Oh,
that because we had guys who were taking over stations who were just not prepared. I went detail recruiter to station commander in the same shop.
yeah.
And
That's not good.
so,
That's not
oh,
good.
it's a bad idea because you go from
But
being
what was
a
always the
leader.
mantra of like becoming an NCO? We're going to put you in a whole different unit where no one knows you, right? Like when you become an E5, that's what the intent was. But we go back to recruiting where it's like, oh, now you're in charge of the whole station and everyone knows you as fucking recruiter Steve, right? Wait a minute. Now you're in charge. Fuck you, bro. I'm not doing that shit.
But that's another thing about that. That's how I ended up in operations. Because I mean, think about missile system techs. How many of us do you think there are? I can tell you when I
Yeah.
got out
Which
when
is
I was
different.
getting
I get it. Like sometimes you are limited to your MOS, right? But what's a standard infantry guy like, right? They can maneuver people a little bit easier.
I went to ALC at Fort Lee, Virginia. Originally, it was in Redstone Arsenal, Alabama, was where our schoolhouse was originally, and then they moved
Yeah,
it to Fort
yeah,
Lee.
it's still horrible. I've been there once.
It was fun. That was a good place to go to AIT. So um, we go in. I was distinguished honor grad for my class. And so, as part of that, we used to have Sergeant Major Muhammad, who was the Ordnance Corps Sergeant
Real
Major.
quick, what he just said was he's smarter than you. Anyway, carry on.
That is absolutely not true. But I can smash a book. So, as part of being a distinguished honor grad, every week when they would graduate, he would bring in those guys. And one of my squad leaders, who him and I were E4s at Fort Bragg, he became my platoon sergeant at Fort Carson. He was the enlisted aide to Sergeant Major
Oh wow.
Muhammad.
Okay.
So they bring us in, and he goes through and, hey, what's your MOS? I'm a 91 Bravo, I'm a mechanic, or I'm a whatever. So he gets to me, what's your MOS? I'm a 94 Alpha, missile system tech. And he looks at me, he looks at my uniform and sees my recruiter badge and goes, are you still in recruiting right now? I said, yeah. He goes, you need to convert. Go be a recruiter. I'm like, when the distinguished honor grad is told, get out of your MOS, you know it's a dead end. And there are 27 at that point. I don't know what it is anymore. At that point, there was 27 E7s in the Army in that MOS. So it was
This sounds like AGR recruiting right now.
the odds are not in your favor.
Yeah, if you want to try and make
So
E8 or E9, not
you
gonna
gotta go. So that is what like the initial push that got me convinced that I needed to convert to become a recruiter in my career. It was, listen, if you're the top guy in your class and they're telling you gotta go, you either really ugly or they got no place to put you. And I'm not ugly, so
Now you are a beautiful, majestic,
I
bearded
know.
man.
Yes.
Um, I am curious before we, because I know I want to get to your book and start talking about this, but the last thing, because we do have this Army background, we got a new administration coming in. I'm just curious what your thoughts are on uh, President Trump's proposed pick for the Secretary of Defense and Pete Hegseth.
Initial based off his where he's been recently, he's probably the guy.
Mm.
Um, this is I don't know a ton about the man, but what I do know is the guy gives a shit about people in uniform. And so to me, if you we spent 20 plus years operation all those things that we've done.
Yeah.
Can you name other than Rumsfeld? Can you name a secretary that you can honestly say cared about each and every person in uniform? I mean, Rumsfeld's known for every time somebody died in Iraq or Afghanistan, he hand wrote their family a letter.
And no one knows that
That's a huge thing.
because they hate
But
him. So no one knows that.
he took people dying personally.
Yep.
And so, and I'm not saying they don't care, but it's one of those things of I don't think on the ground level that they felt taken care of over the last 20 years. It was we need to accomplish this for XYZ. They see those people that are in charge moving up the ranks at their expense. I don't think that's what you're going to get. I think that I think he's going to care a little bit more about what's going on. And I don't think he's somebody who's going to make a decision based on, we need to do this because it helps me. There's been a lot of that at all levels of every government for the last, as long as we've ever had government. I don't see him as that guy. I could be completely wrong, but I don't see him as that guy. I think he's a good pick.
Yeah, I'm looking back on who would have been in our time in uniform post Rumsfeld. We had Robert Gates. Don't really remember much, which he would have been.
He spanned two presidents. I'll give him that.
Yeah, he would have been more of my like, all right, I'm at least I can say me personally, like this is me becoming aware, right? 2011. So I would have been, this was when I became a drill sergeant, just before May 87. Then Leon Panetta, everyone knows Panetta. Chuck Hagel. I don't really remember
Which
him.
is funny. There's a lot of people who are like, oh, Hexet doesn't have the military background, and he was a major, and that guy Hager was what E5 squad leader. That's his military background.
Was
So it's
he?
like, yeah, so it's a big difference. Yeah,
And then we had Ash Carter.
I don't really remember much about Ash Carter. To be
No, I
honest
don't
with you.
remember much either. I know he was the end of Obama, and Trump replaced him with Jim Mattis, which Mattis had a really odd post uniform career with the Trump administration. Trump won, I would say.
Yeah, I was there. That's one of those. There's always been a revolving door. I don't know if people really noticed it much until the Obama years with the media rotating in and out of the administration. But there's always been a military general to defense sector rotation, right? They've all the Raytheons of the world and all that.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know
We
how
are
many
now.
people. I think Mattis is mostly known for his quote, with tears in my eyes. But I think that what most people don't realize is that he, as secretary, he negotiated the deal with Amazon for Jedi, and then turned around and went work for Amazon. And it's one of those. And he had to get a 180-day waiver to go be
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
we could debate on whether would I have taken the job. Hell yeah, I would have taken that job too.
No, no, look,
No qualms with that. But it's one of those. It's hard to be somebody in boots and then see that happen and not wonder, is it at my expense? Whose blood and sweat and tears paid for that? You know. So yeah, there's some of that, and I mean a lot of it is just distrust in the government as it is, anyways.
yeah,
There's a lot more of that now that I think. Well, I don't know if there's more. I just think it's more open. People are willing to talk about it more than they used to. But I don't think Hegseth is that guy. He's all. I mean, everything he's done since since I've known him, other than Fox News, has been, um, working for soldier foundations or that kind of stuff, kind of out in the front.
yeah. And
I
we're
think
getting all the silly stuff starting to come out about him. But I did want to just say real quick, post Mattis, I find this interesting. So you had Patrick Shanahan, 173 days, independent. Mark Esper, 21 days, Republican. Richard Spencer, 8 days, Republican. Mark Esper again, 1 year, 109 days, Republican. Then we went to Chris Miller for 72 days. And these are all this is the turnover during the Trump administration, part one. David Norquist, I don't know if you
yeah, there
remember
was
this guy.
plenty of turnaround.
David Norquist was the SecDef for 2 days, Republican. Um, it is weird because he was the SecDef post Chris Miller, who left on the inauguration for Biden. David Norquist took over for 2 days before Lloyd Austin was appointed, who, as a quote, registered independent, which, if anyone knows,
That's
Lloyd
debatable.
Austin. Yeah, Lloyd Austin, 3 years and 314 days. So he's the current SecDef. Which I have a lot of experience with the man. I think the man has managed to fail up his entire career. So good for him.
The thing that I find wild, well, I don't. How much do you know about General Martin Dempsey?
Oh, General Dempsey, I guarded his shitter in Iraq.
Sorry,
He
so
literally so I would love to maybe you know this as well, but so the D main guard shift, right, in Baghdad on BIAP, on the Baghdad International Airport, D main, right? So Division Main, they had two guard shifts, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. And one of the posts, and this only started once General Dempsey came, one of the posts for 2 hours was to guard his personal porta-john behind the headquarters.
so
And I remember being out there once at I don't know, it was just before midnight. He came out and he's like, "Do I got toilet paper in there?" I'm like, "Yes, sir." And that was my experience with General Dempsey, who at the time was a 2-star. He had just made 2-star, I think, for first AD, became their commander in 2003. Yeah. And then
he was
had
the Army
obviously
Chief of
went on.
Staff for
Yeah, he went
44
on to become.
days
Yeah.
before he became the chairman of the Joint Chief. So a
Yeah.
lot of those are like pit stops on the way too.
Yeah,
Like
it's
they pick
weird.
a guy, hey, I want
It's
this
weird.
guy here, and they just kind of
Yeah.
leapfrog him until it.
2 days is kind of weird,
right.
but 44, yeah. Yeah, no, I do. Yeah, Dempsey, he was the guy. He was the first general officer, I think, to have a cab. I think he might have been the first soldier awarded it after it was created in 05, because that's when I got mine. It was backdated back to a period in 03, or no, 04, January of 04. But yeah, I think the first person I ever saw with a cab was General Dempsey.
So
Maybe he created it. I don't know. I don't remember.
Where we were at first in 2003 2004, we were across the street from the Olympic Stadium. So we had we used to go swimming for PT every day. But it was we had split half of the police academy that was there.
Okay.
And so that's where we first started. And we also had, they called it Bandit Island back then, but that's where 136 was at. And it was this little island. It's like Saddam Hussein's little amusement park.
Yeah. That was
all right. So we had that. We got mortared like crazy when we were we were closing down Bandit Island. We were leaving to go to Karbala.
Okay.
And we're getting mortared like crazy, whatever. So when we get to Karbala, which that was a whole nother kind of shit show. We go down there. We all do our paperwork for our cabs because you get mortared and things blowing up. So we all did all of our paperwork, whatever. I don't have a cab. None of that stuff, for whatever reason, it fell off the boat or whatever. And it got to the point where you had to have so many sworn statements from so many people that most of us just said, well, it's not worth even doing. I'm going to deploy again. I'll get another one. And I never did. So, that whole time period was pretty wild. But he,
No, you're not wrong. So I mean, and I will only bring this up because you're the first person to bring it up because that's literally how it started, right? Like the cab I think was created in '05. Most people submitting for it were serving in Iraq and Afghanistan from '01 up until that point. The cab was created because they realized, oh shit, there's all these people serving who are not infantry getting
yeah,
into combat situations. And you're right. It required multiple sworn statements. I remember the packet we submitted, grid coordinates of the attack, recommendations from company commander all the way up to brigade commander, like all these
and at
things.
that point, you had to go back in time, and hopefully that
Yeah,
guy hadn't departed the army, or
exactly.
God forbid, had passed away for something. Like
Right. No,
it just got
and
to
you're right.
be,
Yeah, and so I think ours was submitted in either late '08 or early '09, and it was finally approved in 2010.
yeah,
So
it was crazy.
and I want to say, I think it was January 20. Like, I don't know. There was so much shit that happened in January of 2004. It was all um, post the whole Christmas bullshit where we were out there just expecting this massive attack that never came, and then we were just constantly doing shit. Which you were there, so you know. But yeah, so I
That's
think it came.
Christmas Eve. That's when we lost the first brigade lost their sergeant major from an IED on
Yeah.
Christmas Eve in '03.
Yes, yeah. There was some wild shit. That same sergeant major came through the gate once during a D main shift and decided to basically call out this dude. I won't say his name, but this oh good old specialist began with a B, um, because he lost his chin strap during the invasion, and he was pissed off that he didn't have a chin strap.
Okay, I'm gonna guess who that is, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, that it was a weird time because I mean
Oh, it
the
was.
army as a whole.
It,
I was in Germany. We still had, I mean, old school BDUs,
yeah.
and
Oh, dude,
so
we deployed to Iraq with two sets of DCUs. I was there 15 months.
yeah. Well, what was crazy about it is some people didn't leave with boots because we had
Yeah, I
one
did. I needed a 10 and a half wide. You know what the
didn't have the right
CIF guys,
size
the
shoe.
guy at CAF said, everyone wears 10 and a half wide. Sorry, we don't have them. I was like, oh,
Yeah,
all right.
and so, but since that point, the army has transformed so much. We went
Yeah.
from the era of pressing your uniform and spit sign in your boots
Yeah.
to, I mean, it's
Dude, that was half of
nothing.
basic training for me. That's what I remember. Like, I
Yeah.
was like, damn, what are we supposed to teach in this other?
Yeah, well, I mean, I went through when even when I was at Fort Bragg, it was you were given, maybe you had your CCT manual, right? Your little soldier task, right? And
Yeah.
your common task
Which,
manual.
by
You
the
would
way,
open that thing up,
for the
and
most
it was
part,
pictures you knew were drawn during Vietnam.
I just want to bring this up to your attention. I don't know if you know this or not, but for the most part, from what I can gather, that book no longer exists in basic training.
It's a sad thing, which is why we are in the
Just
predicament
saying.
we are. But the yeah, now all of them are online. Like, oh, you can get your common tasks online. It's like, well, I'm in the field. I don't have online. Elon, send me a Starlink, please. Um,
Elon, please give me a job in Doge.
yeah. But that was the start of the transformation of the army in a lot of good ways because I think we got out of that
Yeah, no, we did.
Vietnam era
Plenty of
tactics.
good came from it. However,
But it came with a lot of salt too. So it is
yeah,
what it is. But
it is.
hopefully there's some improvement. Was it on the new pick for Sec Def? Nobody will know what kind of job he's going to do till the day starts. So I'm not going to
No,
go
I hope he
jump all
confirms.
over him or jump
I
behind
think
him.
everyone's they're gonna get dragged through this whole dog and pony show for confirmation. But no, I think the biggest like opposition I've seen to him is I have so many people on Facebook who are, they're good people, but they have really odd political opinions on things. And I think one of them, like she posted as soon as he was announced last month, something to the effect of like, this person's done nothing in the military, has no experience, and this is going to be the person who leads our Department of Defense. And it's like, well, first of all, it doesn't affect you one bit. Like you have no, you've got
No skin in the game.
you've got two military age children who are, as far as I know, aren't joining. You never served. You clearly don't know who the man is because he's a retired field grade officer with a CIB. So I think he knows a little bit about like what actually affects soldiers. But that's the weird thing that comes out of these things is it's like we're so hyper partisan about everything. Like it doesn't even matter anymore.
Well, you can bring back joy to politics, or you can bring back like we need to bring back common sense. That's one thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the second part of it to me is, and I've heard a couple people, seen people, a couple people on Twitter say it, and it's like, well, he was in the National Guard. That dude has a
Okay.
CIB. I'll be honest with you, bullets do not care
Yeah.
what branch you're in. So it is,
What about
but
those SF groups that constantly deployed from the guard? Are we going to be like, oh,
yeah,
well, he was SF, but he was in the guard? Like,
yeah, it's just it's a ridiculous argument because listen, they
especially
don't
post
care. You
9/11,
deploy to
where most of the
Afghanistan,
deployments were guard and reserve. Like,
yeah, you deploy to Afghanistan or you deploy to Iraq. Listen, I put you on the same level as every other damn person deployed.
yeah, it's a silly argument.
But then you also got some people like senators who are like, "Oh, well, he was just a low level officer. Well, he was one rank lower than you
A
when you were."
fucking field grade officer is what he
Yeah.
was, right?
So yeah,
Like, oh, do we need to
listen,
have some? We need to have some, like I said, some failing up general to take over the department. Is that going to be some sort of better, like, qualification?
I think that the farther we get away from the usual suspects, I think the better.
Oh, I agree.
And it's just one of those of do I think that readiness is improving? No. Do I necessarily think it's getting worse? No, but I don't definitely don't think it's improving, right? And so if that's what you want, I think you got to get away from the usual suspects.
Yeah.
Again, listen, there's a lot of people who have been nominated and been confirmed and went and done a terrible job. I
Yeah.
remember I had um, I'm trying to remember where I was. I think it actually might have been Germany, but I had a general that I was in his command, and then he went and worked for the VA, and it was absolutely terrible. Actually, you know what? It was when I was at Fort Carson. He was the chief of staff when they changed it. They took the black berets away from the Rangers and
Yeah.
whatnot.
Yeah. 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 Oh, Shinseki.
Just because you have the experience doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be good. But not having the experience, I don't think at that level is a make or break either. I think he has the right stuff. So we'll see. I mean, time will tell. But
Well,
uh,
it all comes down to like post confirmation what support he gets, what buy-in he gets, because there's going to be a lot of people who are going to be resistant because A, they're insulated from repercussions. It's very impossible, not very, it's very hard to remove anybody that he's going to ultimately deal with directly, right?
great,
The SecDef, they have, it's like anything else with organizational levels, right? You have direct reports.
great.
He's going to have direct reports from, the heads of the service, the Joint Chief of Staff, all those heads of service, et cetera. But it's how he's able to enact his, you know, goals, change, whatever his plans are on them and on those individuals and how they take that to the force and get it carried out.
I if I could give the man any advice from my miles away view is I don't think the answer needs to be immediately on recruiting. I'm pretty sure it's going to be because I mean every service is
Got to start
recruiting.
there. Yeah, it's got to
Recruiting is a
start.
very difficult
Yeah,
world,
especially
but
right now.
I don't think that recruiting people into a broken service is the right answer. I think that you probably have to start doing some changes in service, and that will help bring in recruiting, right? So, um, but and you've done recruiting. It's all a gamble. You have this plan of what you think the plan looks like on the ground, and you put together this entire
Yeah.
operations plan, and you go execute it, and you don't know what comes out the other side until it comes out the other side. So,
Well, we're also the biggest issue that's facing the Army and honestly all the branches because they've all got, cybersecurity, cyber defense, all these things like that we're transitioning to. And IT is you run into the challenge with how do you convince someone to come into the military and the max you can offer them is an E4, right?
right,
They got their degree. A cybersecurity position or a cyber warfare position, whatever, something that has a GT score of like 115 and higher, some 117 and higher. I think the highest I've seen is 121 or maybe it's 117, 121. So you've already got a hugely limited field based on qualifications, right?
right.
You
It's like the
obviously sound
Navy
like
trying to recruit for the nuke program.
right. So you
You
obviously
only got
sound
so
like you
many.
had a really high ASVAB score. So you know the type of population I'm talking about. So how do you convince this person to take this position, the military, on an E4 pay scale when they can go anywhere in this country, work remote, apply for any company and make six figures? Like, what's the incentive?
Uh, I mean, there's so many. It's not even just cyber stuff, and that's the same
No,
across
I
the
know, but
board
that's
for
like,
so
so the
many things.
Army, the Navy,
Yeah.
they've all got digital transformation, like the Army of
Yep.
2040, the Army of 2030. Like these are the things that the modernization, all these things that they're doing,
Right.
it all centers around digital transformation. And you need IT professionals to like run these positions and to fill these jobs. And you have a limited recruiting field because it's no longer, hey, we just need someone to get a 31 on the ASVAB. No, now you need someone who probably get an 85 North so they can get that GT score of 117 North to try and recruit them. And then also, hey, can you take 35,000 a year as opposed to go take 130 and everything's on your own?
I think
Tough.
I'm a huge hater on throw money at things. I don't
Yeah.
think throwing
Yeah.
money at things is the answer. Um, but when you start looking at like how the medical department recruits and the incentives there, I don't know if you're going to match it, but I think there has to be an incentive there that brings them to put them on at least
100%.
on par.
100%.
Um, and there's always that thing every year that comes out from DFAS. Well, I don't know if they still do it. But they used to do this thing of, hey, you're an E4 in the Army. This is how your stuff, equals on the civilian side, and they include all your benefits, whatever. This
Yeah,
is what
no,
it
they
would
do
cost you.
that, but like that's
I think those estimations are
eh,
extremely generous.
yeah, and I think that
Uh,
works on people who don't know any better.
right, and I think if you spend a couple minutes doing some research and realize that math
I
doesn't
mean,
math
if I go on LinkedIn and just search cybersecurity versus, I can see that I know what I'm worth in a half hour.
right, and
Whereas if I go talk
so
to a recruiter who's like, yeah, hey, guess what? You qualify for this. And guess what? It's not even open right now. But
you
it's
have to find a way to put them on par, and until the Army figures out a way to do that. Now, they're
that's not
listen.
always what like is this an STAP
I
issue?
mean, yeah,
Even
that's
with STAP though, STAP doesn't cover like STAP's been the same forever. Like,
right,
okay, STAP level 6 is $350, $400 a month. Okay.
right,
Airborne school has been $150 a month forever. Like, what
right.
are
But they
those
do pitch
those
it to you. Oh, one jump is worth $450.
yeah, but those incentives haven't changed, man. Like they're so
No.
it's silly.
So that's one thing that like the medical department does is every year they get a new, well, in the reserves, they get their own thing and they
Yeah.
look at like, hey, this is how many we need of what AOC and this is what we're going to offer them. And they're all different across the services. Like, the Secretary of the Army, or excuse me, the Secretary of Defense, his people say, hey, we're going to give it out to critical care nurses because across the board we're short on critical care nurses. Well, the Army might not, might need critical care nurses. The Air Force might be full up, so they're not going to offer that money to them. So,
Yeah.
but they have to figure out a way to put them at least on par with what their counterparts
No,
on the
that
civilian
that that
side.
may be
And
the
it
answer.
just,
Honestly, the answer may be to take those specific positions outside of typical recruiting and put them in
100,
their own
yeah.
command. Or maybe not
Um,
their own command, but maybe their own department. Like, hey, we're going to have a specific IT, cyber warfare, drone operator recruiting specific field because we
right,
can't make the typical recruiter who's responsible for the infantry and all that other stuff. Oh, please go find this recruit who's one of one who can get a 117 GT score and who's also super patriotic and wants to do this shit for the army. Probably not a good sell in Vallejo, where I came from in California, right? Where I got
yeah.
literally, if I can get a 31, I'm great because that's this kid's way out.
Well,
Otherwise,
not only that,
he's
I
a
mean,
musician
SoCal,
or an athlete. He's never getting out of the fucking hood, right?
my
So,
footprint in SoCal that I had, it was one. I didn't have a shopping center, which is a great place to meet people. No,
right.
we didn't have that. I didn't have a college. I didn't have a reserve unit.
Yeah, you're
And
fucked.
so it's like, well, where do you find these kids? Oh, you can find this kid and you'll put him in a reserve unit in Moreno Valley. Well, the kid's a high school kid. He didn't have a car. How's he
Don't
going
even
to
have
get
a
to the
car. Yeah.
drill? So there was a lot of those things that play
Yeah.
along. But then the other side of it is how specialized do you get?
Yeah.
I mean, you could overdo it and break it up to where, hey, you guys are looking for cyber warfare and you guys are only going to be looking for this. You guys, then I don't think that plan works either. So,
No.
um,
I think you got to take it out of the recruiter's hands. Yeah, I think you got to create a special, like, maybe it's just a special department head who focuses specifically on that, and then you incentivize them, like you said, like the same way we incentivize AMED,
yeah,
right? And you
it's
know how these bonuses work. You said critical care nurses. Okay, that's one thing, but man, I remember being a station commander course with someone who said they were on for one neurosurgeon, and this guy gets a
yeah,
membership bonus every year for like 80,000 plus a 350,000 fucking sign-on bonus. Like,
yeah. I
Sign
mean,
me
when I
up.
was doing AMED, we had
Sign me up, man.
we put in a cat who lived, this guy was like 4 seconds from Canada. And I owned the central third of the state of New York. So
Okay.
Binghamton all the way to Canada.
Yeah, yeah, I
Fort
know
Drum was my
Binghamton.
footprint. I hated
Yeah,
it.
yeah. Okay.
I'm not a snow guy, and so that was not
No,
my
stay
vibe.
away from Fort Drum if you aren't.
Well, we owned about 2.5, 3 hours north of that too, so it
That's even
was
worse.
chaos.
Watertown, all that shit. Yeah.
So this guy lived in Potsdam,
Yep, I know
which is
SUNY Potsdam. Played him in baseball. Yeah.
way out in the middle of nowhere.
Yes.
He was a nurse anesthetist, and he joined the reserve, so he's doing 1 week in a month, 2 weeks in the summer, et cetera, et cetera. And his yearly bonus when we wrote him was 400 grand
What? Every year
every year. It's an annual
for a
incentive.
6 year
It's yeah, well, no, they could do 2, 3, or 4 years,
Oh shit.
and then they'll re up again. I don't think it's quite that anymore, but that point it was 400 grand, and it was crazy when you read the message. You're like, oh, 400, you get a 400 grand bonus. They'll break it. No, read the thing, and it actually said this is an annual entitlement. Like,
Holy
bro,
shit.
yeah. So there's some of them where they incentivize like that. I don't know if that's how you do it, but yeah, it's an
I mean, I get
unenviable
it for those
position for
fields, but
recruiters.
that's why I say like these specific positions that we know we already know we need them and we can't recruit them. Like we
Yeah,
already know this now. Because we have the GT requirements. Like it's all there. Like
and
you
how
want to
often
be a
does that
cyber
stuff
warfare
change?
specialist, 117 GT. Okay, that's not easy, right?
Yeah,
We're literally talking SF level. Like that's who we need. We need the guys
yeah,
who we need it for SF, but we also need you guys to be the fucking keyboard punchers for this shit.
yeah.
That's a very, very small field, just period in the army, or
Yeah,
just
and
in the
where you're going to
country. That's a
find them,
small
like
recruiting
where you're going to
population.
source those guys. So
Right. So
I
okay, well
retired and
let's
I moved here and I almost went for the work for this company and they do lots of transportation stuff. And one of the things we're like, hey, one of your very first responsibility will be you have to go recruit train engineers. And my first, like, where the hell do you find a train engineer? Like, I did some research, took me a few hours to figure it out, but
yeah.
yeah, trying to find train engineers is like that's not something that just falls off the tree. So yeah, it's a difficult position, and I think overall every service is going to have difficulty adjusting. The hardest thing in anything, whether you're a civilian, whether you're the military, a small business, large business, people is always the most expensive and the most difficult. And so yeah, they're going to have to figure out something if they're going to try to do the transition piece. I don't know what that looks like, but wish them the best of luck.
Yeah, and that's where we're at. And so where we're at now is you are a published author. I'm holding the book. It is On Account of Wolves. It's right here. It actually looks like that Zach Bryan poster behind you in terms of theme. How do we get to this?
Ooh, um, so I was like thousands of other people who said, someday I want to write a book.
Yeah.
And so
Which is
the
curious because I'm with you and I want to know how you got to that point.
the conversation started our boy from Twitter, OnlyVans. Um,
Not
we
OnlyFans, OnlyFans.
only Vans, yeah. So we started.
Cool guy. He seems nice.
Good dude. We were talking about the old school squad leader books. Remember what I'm talking about? The
Yep.
hardcover, kind
Yep.
of limey green. So he was talking about
Yes.
how he needed some. So I'm like, I got some. I'll send them to you. So we were chatting back and forth, and I basically was like, so "What are you going to use these for?" He's like, I'm going to start writing." And I'm like, "Okay." I say, "Yeah, I've always wanted to write a book." And he's just like, "Do it." I'm like, "Okay." He's like, "No, fucking seriously, stop what you're doing right now. Go write." And so, well, 10, 12 days later, me and my wife are walking through Target and I see these cheap ass Chromebooks. I think it's 230 bucks, 260 bucks. And I just basically turned to her. I'm like, "Hey, I'd like to get one of these because I want to write a book."
Yeah.
And she was like, "Bullshit. You're not going to write a book." And
How long have you been
so
married?
say again,
How long have you been married?
almost 16 years now.
And she had no idea you wanted to write a book one day?
No, she knew I wanted to. She didn't think I was going to do it.
Hmm.
And listen. There are many things. Hey, I want to do this that have never happened. So I
Yeah,
don't
no,
want.
I'm with you. Just
I'm gonna
curious. I just
go.
wanted to get that out there. All
I'm
right,
gonna
all
go
right.
clean the basement. It hasn't
Yeah.
happened for months. Um, so finally she relented and she's like, "Fine, but this is your Christmas present." And I'm
Hell
like,
yeah.
cool. So we wrapped it up. That became my Christmas present. About 3 weeks later, I started writing it. Um, I have always had the story in my head, and then I wrote it, and it didn't become the book I had in my head. It definitely went a different direction. A lot of the main plot stuff is similar, but that was what got started. OnlyVans was like, stop, I'm gonna do that shit right now. And it was like, I think I'm going to. And then my wife being kind enough to relent and not give me too much shit when I bought it. Um, and so that was what kicked it off. Writing it, I started third week of January. I finished third week of August.
No shit, that was quick because now I want to. Oh, see, now that you said that, all right. So, and you can fill in the blanks here, but I'm gonna read the back of your book because I'm looking forward to fucking reading this thing that has showed up. So, after a personal request from the mayor of Riverside, California, Detective Jack Rhodes is assigned the unenviable task of investigating a gruesome murder scene on behalf of the resource-depleted sheriff's department. That sounds pretty prevalent today, right? Saddled with a partner he could do without. Also relevant, irrelevant. More questions than answers, and a trail of leads that spans human trafficking, violent cartels, and brazen daylight kidnappings. The most important question remains: can Detective Rhodes locate the only surviving victim before it's too late? All right, where'd this story come from, man? That's pretty it's pretty intense. Like I didn't know what you were writing. I didn't know like so I know you said you wrote in the book and you were doing all this shit and then this showed up and I was like, "All right, what's this book about?" I knew the title On Account of Wolves. I'm like, maybe he's doing some PTSD shit. I don't know. He's been through some shit in the army. I don't know. But it's not. It looks like he wrote
So
I mean
it's
that fucking
essentially
synopsis sounds pretty fucking cool.
it's a detective suspense style story. So um, I am no Joseph Wambaugh. If nobody knows who Joseph Wambaugh is, there
No
is a
idea.
book. The very first book of his I ever read was called The Secrets of Harry Bright,
Okay.
and absolutely phenomenal book. And so um, that kind of lent. I'm not a sci-fi guy. I mean, I could probably write one if I really tried. I would struggle to do it because it's just not a genre that I'm like into.
Yeah.
I mean, I enjoy watching a Star Wars movie, but well, the old ones. But the it's just not something I'm really is my thing, right? So um, I kind of had this story in my head, and without giving up too much, but the entire book happens in Southern California, in
Yep.
areas where I grew up. Some things are changed for legal reasons, but for the most part, that is. And the funny part, and me and my dad talked about it after he read it,
Oh shit.
is
Cool.
it's my memory of SoCal. So a lot of the stuff that I describe isn't that anymore, right? So when I'm describing a building or I'm describing a hotel, it's in my head what I remember those being like. Um, and so that is a couple of reasons why I like the detective writing piece. One, and I've explained this to a few people, is any investigation whatsoever, whether it's a military investigation or it's illegal or whatever happens to be, it follows a very pretty clear path. This leads to this, leads to this, leads to this. Anybody who's investigating crime, there's a real method to the madness, right? And so these leads lead you here, and you follow them or you eliminate them, whatever the case may be. But it all kind of makes sense as a very logical order. It's not that difficult, and this might be because I'm a terrible writer, but it's not that difficult to write that because the plot will stay until you have a twist. The plot will stay logical. And so that kind of gave me a chance to describe the scenes enough to where they I think the reader can get it in their head, but not so much that it's so detail oriented that it distracts from their reading. I think one of my favorite things about reading a book is being able to kind of build the scene in your head. So I tried to do that. But it also gives you a lot of time for that like gallows humor. And listen, when you read the book, there's a character named Sanderson. I'm going to read you a.
Oh yeah, here we go.
I actually asked somebody who had bought my book what her thoughts were on it so far, and I won't read the whole thing, but one of her section was, I hope somebody punches Sanderson somewhere, and he
Is
is
this
that.
is this is this Sav? that wrote that?
No, that's not Saf.
Sounds like something she would say.
No, yeah, she definitely would say that. I don't know what I don't know if she's read it yet. She hasn't told me anything about it yet, but he's that guy who's just frustrating. And she actually asked me who I based the two primary characters on. There's two of them: Rhodes, who's the detective, and then the partner he gets saddled with is the deputy, Sanderson. And there are days, where those characters come from, and there are days where I'm a Sanderson, and there's days where I'm a Rhodes. They're kind of a yin and yang to each other.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll see as you read it, when one is shit hot, the other one is not, and vice versa. So those are kind of my split personality feelings about me sometimes. But it was good. It was fun to write. The post writing stuff sucks.
What do you mean
post-writing? So once you write the book, that's fantastic. But then to get it published, you got to format the book, and you got to do this, you got to do that, and
okay.
That part is not fun. So shout out to Molly Miller, because she wrote Babylon's Fallen Star, fantastic book. Go buy it. I reached out to her and was like, how did you do X, Y, and Z? And she shared every single resource she had with me to help me kind of make my way through it. But writing a book is much better than the formatting of a book and prepping it to publish. And then the selling. I'm not a fan of selling books. I'd much rather write them, but means to an end, right? So that's kind of where the book came from. I think it's fun. I think it's got enough good twists on it. Shout out to Rob Terwilliger. He's also on Twitter. He was the guy who I sent it to that helped edit it. And he's basically, I leaned on him because I knew he wouldn't blow smoke. And it's like, hey, man, this part sucks. I mean, there's one character who he was named something. He's named after somebody on Twitter. He was named one thing. And then this guy went so far as to look up that name and find out how many actually have that name in the world. It was like, bro, there's like none. You might want to change the name. So we ended up changing the name of a character because he spent that much detail on telling me I was an idiot for trying to name him something stupid. So, yeah, he did a great job. And he's got a full plate with family and kids and whatever. So I appreciated him. I reached out to you and asked you your opinion on what I should send him. So I sent him a bottle of the good stuff. So he.
Oh yeah, what'd you end up getting him?
The one
not free 12.
Yeah.
Nice.
So hopefully he's off drinking that somewhere. But yeah, that's stuff. So I didn't write it on my own. There was a lot of people that helped me. Him, Thomas Servium, who's on Twitter as well. He gave me his opinion on it. And then, I sent it to a few folks and, thanked them for their help. But yeah, it was definitely a process. It was fun, but it was definitely a process.
I noticed chapter 2 begins with a unit deployment to Iraq. Are you in this yourself? Is this following you, or is
so? I won't. Well, I'm not going to talk too much about what I do now, but I do work for the government, and so I did have to send, because of those.
Oh, jeez! I
had to send the book.
Oh shit!
To them for them to clear it.
Oh,
before, wow. Even though everything in there is anecdotal for the most part.
So is it a military book for the most part, or is it just this?
It's not. Back? So okay. One of the characters has a military background, so a lot of that is. There are some parts you're going to appreciate, like the part where, and you know this from your time as a recruiter, there are definitely people on staff who like to have meetings because they're lonely. And so there's a piece where he discusses hating meetings. I think you'll appreciate that section. There's little bits about
have meetings because you're lonely. I love it.
Oh, there was a meme that went around for the longest time in recruiting. It was this guy was like pointing. And on the side, it was like, are you lonely? Do you need friends? Have a meeting. Anyway, so that was...
That's great.
So there's a lot of anecdotal stuff, and you'll see some stuff in there that is kind of based on what I did. I mean, there's no door kicking. There's none of that stuff with that. I didn't do any of that business, so I didn't feel comfortable speaking on any of that. But all the other stuff is very much, you'll see when you read it. That's chapter 2. You'll deploys on Mother's Day. That was real for me. So, I wouldn't call it a military book.
Funny, like it's kind of funny where there's, Mother's Day, Christmas, like, isn't it always funny how like there's all those actual stories of those things taking place in the Army?
Ask me how
Other than
many
Millie.
times while I was in Germany. Now, I was in Germany from October of 2002 until July of 2007. Ask me how many times I was able to go to Oktoberfest.
Hey, Steve, how many times were you able to go to this Oktoberfest while you were in Germany?
Because every time we weren't deployed for it, we were in the field.
Do you think the Army does that on
Every
purpose? Do you think they do that on
single,
purpose? They've got to do that
I
on
have no
purpose.
doubt.
No, that has to be, right? That has to be.
Every year, because it starts what, second week of September, right? Because we got to celebrate the wedding from generations ago of the king. It starts in September and rolls over into October.
Oh,
It always
it's
seemed like first week, second week of September, we would go to Grafenwehr. We would do all the way through table 12. And then we would go to Hohenfels and do our, European version of JRTC or NTC. We would do that. We would get a weekend in the middle. We would come back for 4 days just so they didn't have to pay us family separation pay, right? And then we would go right back. So, no, you couldn't convince me that they didn't plan that on purpose.
well, and that's what. Hold on, I gotta send this to my brother real quick. No, that I. It always brings me back to my grandfather when he was still alive, and he would always ask, like, "Hey, you know, what you do when you were here? What was Iraq like? What was Afghanistan like?" And I'm just like, "Hey, Grandpa, I know you don't know this, and I know it's not your fault, but whatever you guys did while you were in Korea as an 18-year-old, you ruined it for me because I don't get to have any fun." Right? You guys got to have all the fun in the World War II Korea generation. Even Vietnam had a lot of fun. Me, as first guy into Iraq, 16-month extension, all those like no, I didn't get
I
the only fun I had going into Iraq was raiding the fucking duty free store at the Baghdad airport. That was kind of cool. But the SF dudes and all of Third ID pretty much beat me to it, so I didn't really get a lot.
The most fun I had on any deployment ever was 2003. We had just taken over the south side of the police academy. We cut it in half, and we owned part of the traffic circle. And we did what's called
Ooh, the
Operation
traffic circle. I
Nisa.
remember that. Nice.
Yeah.
That doesn't get brought up much. Good for
Yeah,
you. Look at that.
the we did Operation Nissan. I don't know if you know what
I
that
don't.
was.
Do
So
not.
basically, they said, "Listen, we need these little shit kicker Nissan trucks. You know the one I'm talking about, the
Yeah,
white
the heat.
crazy
Yeah,
stretch and
yeah,
such."
yeah. Those trucks are great.
They said, "Hey, we need these. Go find them."
Oh, okay.
So it was like, "Hey, anybody here ever hotwire a car?" Like, I've hotwired a car.
Of course, I'm from
Cool.
Southern
Here's
California.
what we did.
Hot wire car.
We literally, and these guys all got paid. I still feel guilty for doing it, but they all got paid back for their cars. But we would literally follow him. Guy would get out of his car and go into a cake shop. We would jump in his car, hotwire, and take off with his car. And then everybody had a screwdriver in the.
Oh
That's how
my
we started these
gosh.
stupid things in the fob. So,
God bless
but
the
we just
United
went
States.
around town and we just stole cars. It was wild. And then at a certain point when
Is
they
that in your
realized,
award somewhere? Like,
I
was
wish,
that
I wish.
quantified somewhere?
When we were getting ready to leave, or by that point, we got replaced by the Hawaiian National Guard in that
Oh
spot.
wow, that's interesting.
And
Hawaiian National Guard.
yeah, that was an interesting right seat, left seat.
Sounds like it. So, because
They figured out they were getting
didn't
paid.
25th ID come with them?
I don't
Didn't 25th
remember
ID replace?
in certain spots they did.
Okay, yeah,
So
because
they
that's
replaced us for mission, but they didn't necessarily take over the
yeah. I
same
wonder if
fob.
that was the thought process behind it. Like, at least let's integrate, you know, Hawaii
But
with Hawaii. Maybe that.
they figured out, like the local
That's
nationals had
funny.
figured out, hey, if they take your car, they give you cash. So we'd be doing, and in that traffic circle, you had what was it? I don't remember what the two routes were, but where we were at, which was just south of the,
Tampa and fuck, what was the other one?
yeah, Tampa was one, and then the one that ran by the north of the teardrops, right, the Martyrs Monument, which is where First AD had their headquarters down underneath it, right?
We get it.
It's not Neptune, is it?
It sounds familiar, but we're about to find out. What were the main MS in Iraq?
So while you were doing convoys, you hit that traffic circle and everything bogged down because of trying to get through the traffic circle.
Irish. Was it route Irish?
I don't think so.
No.
They
Irish.
both ran east west. And what
Tampa, Arrows, and Irish were the MRS.
they
MS.
both ended up they both basically converged right outside of Bandit Island. They
Hmm.
had that huge tower, but um,
We'll figure it out.
we you would get bogged down in there because you had to go through the Iraqi checkpoint and get them to open all the concertina wire, and then you went through our checkpoint and you had to go through all the. So you get bogged down, and while you were there, if depending on how long your convoy was, you would go across an intersection and you would just get smoked because they knew if you wrecked their car. So they were like they were doing everything they could to get hit because they're like, oh, you're going to give me $25,000 for this fucking $15 truck. So that was always kind of wild, but yeah, I always people like that. Well, how was it? How was it? How was it? It was like $1 million experience I wouldn't pay a dime for. I mean, I learned a lot about myself and what I'm capable of doing,
Yeah, yeah, that's true.
and I've also learned that yeah, that's just not my vibe anymore. I'm glad
No,
that
no,
part's
you're
well
right.
done.
But so, what were you, 26 when you were
When
there?
we deployed, I was what year was I born? I was 25 when we deployed.
25, yeah.
I
So
hadn't
I
quite
was
turned.
I was 22. I turned 23 over there.
I
So
turned
no,
I turned 23 over there, I think. So
yeah. No, that's I mean it's a good point because you go back and you look back at that time and I think when you're at that age, uh you have no real concept of the big picture. Your only
we didn't
concept.
think that it was dangerous to drive around with no doors on.
No, right,
And,
exactly.
and then we got
Exactly.
those fiberglass doors, and we felt like we were unstoppable. It's
We
like,
never got those. The most extent we got was sandbags in the floor.
well, we did a lot of the sandbags before.
Yeah.
We also had we had
Index.
a welding shop in my company, and
Yeah, and
so
we did
they
get
would
some
do all the
steel. They put some steel on the inside of the doors, which
and
was
they
cool.
put so much of it in the bottom of it that all the motors died because they were weighed 50,000 pounds more than they were supposed to. But yeah, we were thought we were untouchable, and then that was the advent of the IEDs. Was I mean they were starting to put them on the
Well,
bridges, so
yeah.
we had to change which side you went on so that
Yeah,
you could
driving
quote
down the
unquote
middle of the
hopefully
road because all the fucking trash or any
yeah.
like animal carcasses were packed full of something. Like soda cans were exploded. Yeah, like I think late '03, early '04 was just like trial and error from both sides.
There was a point in spring of '04, which is basically when Sauter's army stood up,
Yep.
where
No,
the
those were the fuckers. I was
yeah,
like,
when the
that dude
ROE
ended up
was
becoming president of Iraq. Like, what the fuck?
the ROE was if you see somebody with a donkey or you see a donkey unaccompanied to shoot it. And then at one point, ROE was if you see somebody with a green or a yellow bandana,
Yeah,
you can shoot
yeah,
them no
yeah, yeah.
questions. And it was like,
Yep.
we
Well,
can do
that
what?
was our convoy out with that battalion, that MB battalion. I told you it was like I remember that battalion commander getting up, and I was like, "Wow, that's cool. I actually feel pretty safe with this guy." He was like, "Yeah, you see the green armband? You shoot that fucker, and
Yeah.
we'll make it home."
And it
I don't
didn't
know
make
who
a
that
lot of
dude
sense
was.
to us.
I wish I would have remembered his name, but Lieutenant Colonel whatever. He was cool as shit, and I feel bad for him and his boys who went back because we got the Camp Cedar 2. It was supposed to be a short halt, turned into a 7 day long halt, and they got turned around and sent back to Bayap. We
Yeah.
got to go home.
I felt bad for, I believe it was 16th Engineers. Those dudes were already back in Gießen, Germany. And it was like, hey, sober up. You're getting back on a plane. You know,
Oh,
those guys were like, no, they were back in Germany. There were
they
people
flew
back.
them back from Germany to
They had
Iraq.
made it all the way back. And then they turned around and said, listen, the
What the
enemy.
fuck logic is that though? Like seriously.
Well, at the point, I don't think they had made the decision that they were going to extend us. I think it was still a, hey, keep moving things forward. And when they finally said it, and the reason the pep talk they gave us when they did it was the enemy gets a vote.
Okay, cool.
And
Yeah, we get
yeah,
it. The enemy gets votes, but why would you send engineers? Like,
and
what
so
the fuck do the engineers have to do with this shit?
they turned around and they brought all those cats back from Gießen.
No, did
And
they all show up?
oh yeah, well I don't know. I couldn't speak on.
No,
I have to
I
imagine
would love to know that.
roll the dice.
Because
Somebody didn't come back,
come
but
on, man. Like now we're just getting into stupid shit, right? Because
yeah,
like these are things that most people have no idea about. Literally, most people have no idea about.
a good friend
So
of mine.
up until this point, I know a ton of dudes from the first day. Like we were with them, we were integrated with them at Bayap. I know a ton of those dudes who got turned around off our convoy. But I do not until you're telling me this now. You're
Yeah,
telling me that there were fucking dudes who got flown
made it all
back.
the way back and
They
turned around and come all the
redeployed to
way.
Germany and got sent back to Iraq.
So there is a friend of mine. He got out as a master sergeant, but he was a
This
sergeant
is
first class
so
when we were
army.
together, and he was part of their. Um, I can't even remember what we called them because it used to be like FSBs and there was four support teams, and then
Yeah.
that went away because FSTs became surgical teams, right? So that anyhow, so he supported the field artillery, so 2-3, I believe, was who the field artillery was at the time, and he was part of that crew who was like at BIOP, hey, your plane's not happening, those guys are coming back, kind of thing, and it was like, are you kidding? But they were all ready to go.
Nuts, man.
And then we ended up staying, and I don't think we came back. If I remember, I made it back before my birthday, but
When's your
only by
birthday?
like July 31st. But I only it was only like by days.
I left in May 5th.
Um, the it's my wife's birthday.
May 5th?
Yes,
Oh, nice.
yes. But that was a chaotic time. But we had the brigade
But
sergeant major
that
came down.
sounds, I like, no, I don't want to cut you off on that. Go ahead. Yeah, that sounds important. Brigade
But
Sergeant.
it was very much a, hey, listen, they get a vote. And so that was when we put together everybody for Karbala, and it literally was a, hey, you grab your stuff, you're going to Karbala. There was no like real. So we packed our stuff and we threw them in a convoy. We all met up at Bandit Island. We made an even bigger convoy, and that's when we went to Karbala for that whole period, which was funny because
I just find it
the enemy
odd.
gets a vote
Yeah.
because Sadr Army stood up in Baghdad, and so they sent us to Karbala.
Yeah.
Which,
No, I get, look, I know all about the fucking Solder Army and all that shit
yeah,
that went down in May. Um, I am just really curious about that decision though, because you're telling me that these engineers who were so vital to the fucking mission that you allowed them to be the first ones home, but you
they
had
turned
to
them, bring them
then
all
you had
back.
to get them back on a fucking plane and send them back
Yep.
for what? What did they
Uh,
do when they got back there? Because you guys were extended for 3 months, right? Is that what it was?
we should have been gone in May. We left in July, so 3.5 or
Yeah.
so, something like that. Yeah.
What the fuck did these engineers that got sent back on a what did they do? Like, I'm pretty
So
sure
I went to
rebuilding
Karbala, and
FOBs.
a lot of guys went to BIOP. So that's what happened with. So
Yeah,
we
no,
went
I
to
know. I know most of the guys got sent and returned to buyout because, but it
they went
wasn't.
to Burger Town.
Yeah, but it was just like it was a numbers thing. It wasn't like they had anything to do because the engineers had already they built they built all the showers, they built all the fucking burns.
Yeah,
What were they sent there to do?
that's a great question
25th was there. That's why I bring up 25th ID when we go back to Hawaii. Like they were there. Like what the that bothers me, man. Like 20 years later, that bothers me because I'm like, why would you take people back from their fucking home to go? Like, what was the national security interest in doing that?
because it was the whole division or the whole brigade
That
got extended.
fuck
It
that.
was the brigade. I don't
That's
know if
General
necessarily
Dempsey,
was.
though, bro. That's fucking a man who could have easily said, "These men are home with their families. What else do we have? What do we have? What? Who's coming?
Yeah,
Let me
it
look at
was. It
my
was.
force com. Let me look because we all know force com does this shit for fucking years at a time. Hey, force com, brief me on who's coming in the theater.
Yeah.
Who can I pull early? Who can I bring
The
now? That's fucking bullshit, dude. That's what
the
I'm telling you, bro. I am telling you, Steve, you know this because I know you've seen it, but what you just described is a fucking flaw in our system. It's a flaw
100%.
in our army, it's a flaw in our military, and it's a flaw in our government. You sent men and women back home, and then
Yeah.
you told them to get back on a fucking plane, and literally nobody knows it.
The
There's probably 0.001% of the
there's definitely
population.
people who know about it. Probably just the ones
Yeah,
that live it
them
though.
who were affected by it, their immediate family. But I can go ask my fucking parent. They don't know that shit.
Nope.
You can go ask people. We can go post this on Twitter right now. Did you know that there was an engineer unit sent home in '04 and told to get back
Turned
on
around and brought
to go
back.
back to her? No fucking clue.
The part about that whole thing was they sent us down. So they sent everybody to BIOP, right? So not it really wasn't dealing with Sauter's army, right? I don't even know what those cats were doing. I don't just eating Burger King and having the large chow hall. They sent us to Karbala, and what was weird about Karbala was if you've ever been there, it's a route that goes north and south. In the middle of the basically dead center of the city is a huge traffic circle. Maybe not like Arc de Triomphe big, but it's definitely larger than a normal traffic circle.
No.
And one side of the thing belonged to insurgents, and the other side belonged to the Polish and the Thai. And they were just content. That's why we were sent there, was because they were just content on, you guys stay on your side and blow things up, and we'll stay on our side. And it's all good. And so that was the mission we ended up doing after the fact. So the excuse of, well, the Sauter's army stood up, and the enemy gets a vote, and then everything we did wasn't that. We weren't in Solder City. We weren't. So yeah, it's definitely one of those things. But yeah, I wish my buddy Carl could speak to it better because he actually lived the thing and literally at BIOP, and half their guys are gone, and hey, half their guys are coming back. And um, if you ask me how many, somebody went AWOL. There's no doubt in my mind.
Oh, I would sure
They
hope
didn't
so.
go
I
100%.
honestly, I might. I mean, well, I don't know. I was so stupidly
Our
fucking
our
pro whatever
deployment
at
was
that
so
point.
long that we had a guy. Now, if you remember, they stop lost people, and then they were
Yep.
slow. At one point, they
Yep.
were letting
Yep.
people get out of the army, so onesies and twosies. I had a guy in my section who went back. We had another guy. I don't remember what his MOS was, but he was in our company. He left, got out of the army. They sent him back to the States. He decided he couldn't act as a civilian. He joined the army again, and he ended up back in our unit on rear D before we redeployed.
Hell yeah, you love
And,
that.
so we get back and we're like, dog, why did you not? He's like, no, dude, I got out of the army and came back. Like, there's no way. Like, oh yeah, I did. I decided I didn't want to do it. And
That's awesome.
like, holy crap. So yeah, we were there for a long time, and people absolutely got screwed. So
That was wild, man. That is nuts. It's fucking wild. And I think the problem is that no, not even nobody. I'm not even going to just say the average person is it. Nobody knows that.
yeah,
Because they,
well, I could
what did
two,
that
three, and 16th engineers now.
what did that do? Like that didn't do anything.
No, it was literally long enough to get a shower, say hi to your wife, and turn around and come back. It
Yeah,
was a shorter. They were in Germany
that was
less time than
enough
you
to
would have.
fucking that was probably enough to just fucking cause some more divorces more than anything. Like I hate to
Yeah.
say that, but
Remember
that's
when we used to go to Qatar
yeah,
for
little 3 day R&R.
that was their trip was shorter than that R&R to Doha, Qatar.
I see. I'll be honest. I do have a cool story with that. I was the third flight out. We went through BWI here in Baltimore. When we landed, we were treated like we just won the fucking Super Bowl. Like
Yeah,
people line the fucking. I was just like, holy shit, this is
that's
great.
how they did it at Dallas.
Yeah. Um, I went from October 19th to November 3rd. And I remember being in the Orlando airport on November 3rd. And the second they were talking about it, uh, this was Vega, Specialist Vega, Francis Vega. She was the first person I knew to die in the country. She was on a Chinook who, and she had taken the place of a sergeant who didn't want to go on leave. So she was bumped up. She was on a Chinook flying to go take her flight out, and it was shot down by a RPG. And I remember finding out about that in the airport in Orlando. I didn't know it was her until I got back, but that's when I realized, like, oh shit, like
The so
it's on right now. Like it's on. And that was someone who wasn't even supposed to be in that position, not on that flight, not in that seat. And that was kind of the birth of the insurgency right there. Was November 2nd of 2003.
so when we first started, it was they decided they were doing the RNO and I don't know when it was instituted. They probably had it like game planned or
Oh, for sure. You know that. Yeah, for sure.
But so they said, okay, we only have this many slots. So people who don't go on leave, you get to go to
Bro, it was
Doha.
6 months from the day for me from the invasion of Iraq. I'm just gonna say March 19th was the invasion date. October 19th is when I went on. 6 months to the
They
day.
I got there and I'm like, I'm not going to go on leave. I don't really care. I'm not
Yeah.
going on leave. And so they said, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to send you to Qatar. They've got a
Mm.
TGI Fridays or a Chili's or whatever. I think it was a
Hell
Chili's.
yeah, they got it
I'm
all.
like,
Let's
cool.
go.
And then the sun goes down and you get to have,
Dairy
beer. Like,
Queen, what's up on the pool?
yeah. So I'm like, cool, I'm going to go do that. So I go do that. And they get to the very end and there was two of us. And one of our NBC, our chem guys, um, they said, hey, we've got two slots. You guys can go on leave. And I'm like, whoo, I get to get both. This is awesome. Get on a truck, go up to BIOP, go to that little spot where they're trying to get everybody out of country to go on leave. And they say, well, we've got one slot, not two. And so I'm like, okay, I went to Qatar. You can go ahead and do your thing. So I let him go. I'm waiting for a convoy. They say, hey, we've got another spot. It doesn't leave for 2 days. I'll wait 2 days. No big deal. So I wait the 2 days. I ended up getting Christmas and New Year's at home.
Oh
That
shit!
could not
Hell
have
yeah!
worked out better. Um,
Hell yeah!
so, but while I was gone, that's when our brigade sergeant major got with the ID attack, and I think that was to me the first time
Oh
because
shit!
I
Okay,
wouldn't say we were close, but I knew the guy, and it was the
yeah,
first time I was like, shit
that
for
was the first
real.
person you knew who was dead, or
Yeah, and
but that's
so
a big deal though because that's not like fucking Joe. That's like that's
no, it's
the
very
odds of a sergeant
different.
major dying in a conflict like this. That's that's
Yeah, and
pretty
it was Christmas Eve, and he was driving around to see his Joes on Christmas Eve.
exactly. Yeah, he's doing the right thing. He's doing what he
Right.
should be doing as a sergeant major, and that fucking sucks.
So, and then total, I had three. Well, I had three friends that died in service. One of them died as a drill sergeant. Um,
What?
yeah, he came home for lunch one day and they found him in his house on post. His wife found him and he passed away.
What the fuck?
So that happened. But then I had me and my friend Carl was talking about. We had a guy that we used to go golfing with when we were in Germany. It's a great place to go golf.
Yeah.
And so his name was Brad Hughes. He was a former Marine, or he was a Marine. He joined the Army, sergeant first class. We were platoon sergeants together. I had left, and he had deployed to Afghanistan with his new unit after they split everybody up from Hanau and all that stuff. So he deploys to
Mhm.
Afghanistan. One day he didn't make the meeting or whatever, and they found him in his chew, passed away. I don't know what happened to him. He just died. I'm sure they know now, but we never got told.
Yeah.
And then when my last deployment was 2010 to 2011, so right or 2009 to 2010, so it's right before I came to the recruiting command.
Mhm.
And Erin McClyman, she died in a mortar attack, and she actually worked for me. She was one of my soldiers when we deployed, and then she ended up moving to another section, and then she passed away. So yeah, it's the same ones every Memorial Day. You always see me post the same three pictures. It's those three. So, but yeah, it's
Oh
definitely
no, but you do that.
different.
I post the same, I already told you about Vega and then Sergeant First Class Leggett, Matthew Leggett. He was the one he replaced me in Afghanistan on the base defense team, and like 2 months after we left, he was killed just doing routine pulling security. Someone just came up and knifed him in the back of the fucking throat on a route
Um,
we do all the time, no issues, nothing. But you know how it is. Like once people see the changeover,
yeah.
that's when they test people, and
Right. Well, that's
that's
the
what I
same
think it
reason
was.
why, as we were pulling out our initial deployment, as we're pulling out across the street from the Olympic Stadium, we're all leaving, and that unit that was behind us started getting mortared, and it was because of, hey, those are the new guys. We're going to see what we
Yep.
can stir
Yeah.
up.
No, it
So
is true, and that's what like I remember. It took it took a while to learn about what the situation was, but when I found out the location, I was like, man, come on, outside of Kaya, like there's nothing there. It's like a fucking residential, and it's just businesses, and you don't have to do anything except stand outside of your fucking Humvee. How did that happen? Like that was so
yeah,
wild to me to see that happen because I've got pictures of you go this way, it's the airfield. You go that way, it's the fucking the town, the residential, and I don't have pictures of that, but I have pictures of the airfield, and it's one of my favorite pictures because there's like this little 4 or 5 year old boy, and we threw him a box of Cheez-Its, and he's sitting there trying to open this box of Cheez-Its, right? And I'm just like, man, this fucker literally died because someone came up behind him at that same fucking point where you get out and pull security while these fucking whoever's checking IDs and shit. And I'm just like that made no fucking sense to me.
yeah. I mean, and then like like if you're on a fob, and I'll admit I was a fob it right, so I spent most of my time on a fob. Wasn't infantry, wasn't any of that. And you get mortared, you have these things like exactly what to have and grab your gear, head to the
Yeah. Yeah.
it's routine.
Yep.
And when McClyman died, that's what she was doing everything she was trained to do. I mean, she was
It's
flawless
just wrong
and
place, wrong
just
time.
wrong
That's
place,
all
wrong
it
time.
is. Yeah.
So
Wrong place, wrong time.
there's a time where everybody wonders, right? What would happen if she had still worked at my shop? What if she had done this, or what if she had done that? But all you're going to do is dig a hole for yourself mentally. You can't
No,
think
no,
that
there's
way,
no
even
getting
though
out.
you try to avoid it. It's it's rough. So yeah, you learn a lot about yourself. You learn a lot about your mental abilities, and unfortunately, most of it is how do you deal with shit, and how do you react to shit. That's really what it comes down to for the most part for most people. So obviously, some people have very specific issues, but there's things that happen over there that just don't make no sense. I mean, we were in Ramadi. We had guys that were on a gun truck, and this guy, his kid's named Lopez. He is standing, in the center of anybody who doesn't know, in the middle of a Humvee between the four seats, there's a little metal thing. It's actually a stand to put the missile guidance set from an old tow ground mount system or a Humvee mounted tow on. He's standing on there. He's behind the turret. They're driving through. They're going between Baghdad and Ramadi. They get hit by an IED. There's 75 holes in this Humvee. I mean, it shredded this Humvee. Purple Heart to the driver. Purple Heart. They all lived. Purple Heart to the passenger. Purple Heart to the guy in the back seat. Where he's standing, there's holes everywhere, and that guy didn't have a uniform, Nick. And he was like, and I can understand it. How the hell did I not get hit by anything?
Yeah.
It's one of those things you'll never be able to explain.
No, you can't. You can't. Just it is what it is, man.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
Did you ever go to Afghanistan?
I didn't. I got
No.
lucky. So
Yeah,
nope.
no.
I got done with my third Iraq deployment. I went to recruiting command. I retired, and I decided to write books. So
Decided right, but yeah. So how did you come up with the title On Account of Wolves?
it's a piece of dialogue. It's an
Okay.
accidentally intelligent moment in the book. I had the theme of it in my head for a while, and there was a lot of bounce back and forth between which character actually said it. And so there was some debate to that. But I think character wise, it ended up being in the right hands. But there's always somebody up the food chain. That's what it implies to. There's always something bigger up the food chain. So
Why did you? Because I know OnlyFans. Shout out, what up, OnlyFans? But what did you brought up a few times like, hey, I'm gonna write, but what what was the inspiration? Like, where did the story come from?
so I've always had this idea in my head. Have you ever seen the book or seen the movie Usual Suspects?
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, everybody, of course.
So one of the greatest thing, my book isn't that at all, but one of the greatest thing about that movie to me was how the answer is always right in front of you, right? It's always there. You may not be able to put it in words, and pattern recognition being what it is, you may not recognize it in real time. So I've always had this idea of what the book would be, and how the characters would, how the twist would be, because I mean, there's never been an ending twist like usual, like the verbal cue.
Nah, that's pretty fucking cool. He walks out and just
phenomenal, right?
Yeah.
Everybody who watched that in the movie theater was like, didn't know what to talk about after it.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the idea, was how do you write a story that just doesn't give itself away right away? Again, this isn't Usual Suspects. This isn't really that good, but it's, I wanted it to be a full story. I had a general idea of what it's going to be. And like I said, it follows a pretty logical path until, things are discovered as the investigation goes on. But the important part to me was, I wanted it to be a full book. I wanted it to be a full story. There's a lot of books where it's cliche. I think that's one of the things about fantasy books that I've never really gotten into, and not to knock anybody who does, but it always seems like the ending comes out of nowhere. Like, it's not implied, it's not built up. It's just well, by the way, these people are magical and can do. I've never really, so I wanted to write a book that didn't do that. There's some cliche moments in it because there's some gallows humor, but I wanted it to be a complete story, whether it was 50,000 words or 120,000 words. I was just going to tell it. But then as I got to write it, it kind of changed, because I would have a moment where, like, I think what would be cool for the audience would be X to happen. So then it would be, well, how do I write that without it being cliche? Or coming out of nowhere, just a, hey, by the way, moment. And so obviously there is some of that, because that's what investigations do. But how do I do it without it being just over the top cliche? And so there was periods where I would spend 2 weeks and write nothing. Because I was trying to figure out, how do I get there without it being implausible. I'll just put it that way. Um, Now we talk about like Sibley. The reason why Sibley's books work is because when shit hits the fan, plausibility goes out the window.
They also work because he doesn't write them.
I mean, it's easy to do. I did.
Just kidding.
I did get the one that everybody
Hey,
else,
yeah, no,
the
well,
one
yeah,
everybody else
mine's
wrote.
like, so you've got yours? How'd
I
that
got it.
happen? Because
I
mine's not supposed to be here for the next month or maybe
I,
2 months.
I got mine today, but
Oh,
this is the
whatever.
one that everybody else wrote, not Sibley.
No, I know
So
that. Hold
maybe
on.
that's why
Wait, let me look this up because I ordered it. Did you order it on Amazon or through
I
Wargate?
did. I ordered it on Amazon.
This is fucking weird. Wait, it says it was delivered. Look at this.
Delivered today.
It says it was delivered. I don't know if it's gonna focus.
Yeah,
It
I can
says it
see
was
it.
delivered today. I don't know. Maybe I got to go back to my fucking mailbox. But okay, because it said delivered between like today and January 16th. It was some weird fucking delivery date. But
So
anyway,
when you order authors copies, when you do KDP, so Kindle Direct Publishing,
okay.
when you publish to them and you I can order books at full price and get them like a couple days. If you order an author copy, it takes forever. I don't know why. It's
Hmm.
printed by a different set of folks, I guess, but it's like, yeah, you order your own book at full price and you can get it in 2 days. If you order the author copy that's not at full price, you're not going to get it until, you hope next week. So I ordered them a couple weeks ago and they're supposed to be here this week sometime. So, um, but mine isn't a world that, shit hits the fan and everybody's willing to do whatever it takes to, get to the next day kind of thing. So well, not only that, but I've already said that writing the fantasy stuff or the post-apocalyptic stuff it's I don't know if I could do it. Like, kudos to him. He takes forever, but he writes a really damn good book. Um,
Let's go back. He takes forever. All right, go ahead.
he does take forever.
Yes, very slow.
The problem that I have with Sibley's books isn't that he's slow to write them. It's that fucker teases you about it nonstop. And so it was like
Called marketing, my friend.
when his second book came
It's
out,
called marketing.
I don't know if he talked about it being with the editor for like 5 months, it felt like.
Yeah,
And it's has your editor received the fucking thing yet?
I think he figured out after the first book when people actually liked it. Like he was on to something with the second one. Can't pull that shit with the third one.
No. Can't pull
Can't.
with the third one.
And that's why he's doing this whole like bullshit, like, hey, let me get an apocalypse in pieces thing going on because I have to write my third book, which I think is pretty obvious about where we're going at this point. But with the pieces thing, that's great. And it's right. But it's also not him. It's other people doing the work for him.
Yes. Now,
I'm going to text him as soon as we finish and be like, hey, you know what? I just trashed you for 5 minutes on this last podcast because you are being academically lazy because you're making other people write your fucking books for you. You fuck.
Listen, he picked some good folks to do it.
No, he did.
I'll give him that.
No, there's nothing wrong with that. I'm just saying, but he is picking, he is having others do his work for him.
It's a true story.
All right, there you go. Heard it. True story. That's it. We're gonna call it right there. No.
The one thing about writing a book, though, is obviously I included a bunch of Twitter references, and some of them are hid better than others. Like there's a reference to Braxton.
Yeah.
That is obvious. You can't miss Braxton. But there is a specific thing about that reference to Braxton that I'm waiting for somebody to discover. Nobody has done so. When you finish reading the book, I promise you, I will tell you specifically what it is.
Okay, no, I'm gonna read it. I will probably get it done within the next week. I will message you and be like, hey, in relation to Braxton, because I remember the book. I read it a few times.
But there's lots of those. Oh, it's really bad. You know GSW?
Yeah.
Wound, Indiana, GSW, Indiana. So we're in a group chat with a bunch of us. There's like 30 of us in this group chat. And he asked me as I was writing it, hey, am I in the book? Hey, am I in the book? Hey, am I in the book? Every time, no, you're not in the book. You're not in the fucking book. I didn't write you in the book. Because he always wanted to be in the second Sibley book. I mean, he had t-shirts made. He wanted to be in it. So I lied and I wrote him into the book Ridiculous little side thing. And I wrote it. This dude reads the book and missed himself.
What? No, he didn't. Come on.
You can't, when you get to it, you're going to read it and go, oh, that's definitely him. He read the book and was like, really? That's me? Like, it is so obvious it's you. And so, yeah, he read it and completely missed himself. So there's some good ones in there. There's some hard passes in there. You know, Manhattan Maker, Mixer, whichever one he is
Yeah,
nowadays,
man.
whichever
Oh, good
iteration.
old Bob. Yeah.
Old Bib. So there's some of those in there. But I
All
try
right.
to
So if I can be,
make a
so if I can be,
blend.
if I can be 100% clear here, there are no bourbon fueled podcast characters in here. That's what I'm hearing.
Are you gonna have to read the book?
Oh, that's fair. Look at that. Look
Yeah,
at
there you
that.
go.
That's called a tease,
Yeah.
folks.
There's plenty of them to keep people occupied. So you're gonna recognize some of your Twitter folks. But I also didn't want to get distracted by it either and make it over.
Yeah.
I mean,
So
listen, I completely trash Thomas Servian. I trash him bad in the book on
who do you
purpose.
trash?
Servian, I don't know if you non-Servian.
I don't know. Like
He does port songs.
our world is wide and we don't all know each other.
So I was doing name that tune. He does port songs.
Yeah, no. You do the cool name your tune thing is for
I
that.
haven't done it in a while. Kind of retired it, but we disagree a great deal. He thinks the Beatles are the greatest things to Rubber Soul sneakers.
Well, that's a pretty stupid opinion. So if you need me to back you up, I'm happy to help.
So I make sure I absolutely trash the hell out of him and Ole Miss. So,
right. So this is good. This is a good transition. Well, one question before we transition. All right. So you wrote this book. Is there a sequel or is this it?
I am 12,000 words into the second one.
Oh shit. Okay. So there is a sequel. So we're back in Sibley territory. All right. Now we got Zach Bryan. We got fucking Nirvana. We've got a wide array of music. Who's your favorite band ever?
Ever.
Favorite band ever. Like this,
the
like,
ones
hey,
that I
guess
listen
what?
to the
They're
most.
performing tomorrow. You had no idea, but you're going because they're performing tomorrow. Who is it?
If I could see anybody alive or dead, it would be Waylon Jennings.
Wow, Waylon Jennings. Holy shit.
Yeah.
Oh, so you are very country. I like this.
Never got to see him. The bands I listen to the most probably are Machine Head, Chevelle, and then anything that has Zach Wild, whether it's
All right. So I have a lot of questions for you because I have a wide array of musical taste. But we start with Waylon Jennings. And then you go to Machine Head.
mm-hmm.
Who was the second band?
Chevelle.
Machine Head and Chevelle.
And then when I'm writing, I listen to Sleep Token and Parkway Drive.
No, the Sleep Token's a very new thing. My daughter has been bringing me up on Sleep Token, trying to get into it. I'm not sure if I'm there yet.
Yeah.
But so when I hear Chevelle, I hear Forfeit. When I hear Machine Head, I can't give you any song. I just know they were popular in like my high school years for like they were just a metal
Burning
band.
Red.
Like, well, I mean, like, so I'm not denigrating you at all. I'm just saying, like, Machine Head, you're probably the first person I ever knew who would ever say Machine Head. So I'm curious, like, how did you get into Machine Head over other bands?
So when I was at Fort Bragg, now I grew up musically confused. So if you think about the era,
Everybody did, man. I think everybody from our era was musically confused.
The era I grew up in was so in SoCal, you had MXPX, you had No Effects, you had those guys, right?
For sure.
So you had that thing going on, but then you also had the Offspring and all that mainstream crap that was on the radio.
Yeah.
Some of it was good, some of it was just terrible, right? So then
what was your genre though growing up that you would say you were?
I listened to K-Rock, so it was whatever was on that. So there was a lot of like Green Day and like stuff like that. But I wasn't really, I mean, I didn't even start playing the guitar until my first re-enlistment bonus. I bought my first guitar.
Okay.
And that's so we're talking 99-ish. So I left there, there's no music at the basic training, right? So I left there and then I went to Redstone Arsenal, Alabama. And my AIT was so long that you become permanent party at a certain point. And I was hanging out with a bunch of guys who were from the South. So it was a bunch of like Nappy Roots, Outcast, Silk the Shocker. I still do
Milk
like
the Shocker,
it ain't my
yeah.
fault. Like so there's that. Um Spotty Howdy Dope Delicious kind of stuff.
Yeah,
So I
hell
listened to that, and then I got to Fort Bragg, and when I got to Bragg, I ended up with a roommate who that's all he listened to was metal. So he was very much Machine Head. I mean, Deftones were becoming big when they were still kind of a metal band instead of that like vibey groove thing they do now. There was that. I mean, Slipknot came out. I think what 99. There's a Slipknot gold record on the wall. That's a
Holy
real
shit,
record
this is
industry of
wild.
America.
Like, dude, you were saying some of the wildest shit. We've got Silk the Shocker.
Yeah, we went Silk the
We've
Shocker to
got
Slipknot,
fucking wait, who'd you say
Walnut
before
Creek.
Slipknot?
Uh, who did I say before Slipknot? Oh, Deftones.
Yeah, you Deftones. Yeah, because like Deftones '96. That's when I got into them. I was a sophomore. Like it was,
Yeah, that was
yeah,
around the Fur
Deftones.
album and all
Yeah,
that.
around the fur. Hell yeah. Like my daughter just recently sent me, it was probably 2 or 3 months ago, a text about like, Dad, I'm really into this band Deftones. I'm like, what?
Yeah, so
Because they're still around. That's what's crazy.
they are still
We talk
around, but they're
about them.
very
We talk
different
about
than they
corn.
were.
Like these bands are still around.
They were very heavy, distorted back in the day, and they're a lot
Yeah.
vibier now than they used to be.
Yeah. Now they're not. Yeah.
White Pony album kind of changed
White Pony.
who
White
they are.
Pony is when it's big shift. Yeah. Big
Yeah.
shift. But no, you
So
talk about corn. Yeah, I remember you mentioned corn earlier in the conversation, but that's true. Like corn, like I remember, like, dude, I got made fun of for wearing their fucking shirt in 8th grade. Like,
yeah, and they were
and now
just
they're like one of the biggest
weird.
bands ever, and they're still playing the same shit. It cracks me up, man.
So my daughter, she's 15.
Okay.
Dad, you listen to Corn? I'm like, yeah, I could listen to some Corn. And she goes, do you know their song Twist? Twist, you know, the part where he's doing the like crazy. It's her favorite. I could put that on and she starts jamming. This is a girl who listens to Taylor Swift, by the way. And just
Yeah,
you
yeah,
put
yeah,
that
no,
song on,
yeah,
she
yeah,
will
yeah.
start
Yep.
headbanging. It's crazy.
Yep. Uh-huh.
So I had a roommate, and that's what I got into. And then, when I was in high school, like Metallica was still big, Black Album was still out. You know, you had that period in what 94.
That's what killed Metallica was the Black Album.
Yeah, 100%. And well, I don't think they would have gotten as mainstream if Cliff was still around. But
You think
they
he would have really prevented them
that
from?
dude was the most metal based player of all time. He would have
But
left the
was
band
he
and
that
everybody.
like? See, this is a good question for you because people like yourself who are like, do you think he had that much influence over
100%.
Kirk and
100%.
not Kirk, but over Lars and James?
So you got to think about when the band
So
first started.
was Cliff the alpha?
I think he probably was.
Really?
Definitely, in my opinion, I think he probably drove that band musically more than
I was gonna
Lars.
say because what you just said, he was very musical though. Like he
Well,
was.
I mean, you got to think all the way until I believe he just passed away, but his dad was still huge supporters of Metallica even
Oh,
afterwards, and
I have no idea of
he
his
was
dad.
like a legend to them because that was one of the guys that started it.
Yeah,
But
I had no idea of his dad.
if you think about Kirk Hammett, so when they originally start, right, you've got the original band guys,
Yeah,
and
Kirk
Kirk
Hammett.
Hammett's not part of the band.
No, it was fucking Dave
So
Mustaine.
right, Dave Mustaine's there, and so
I would have
Kirk,
loved to just see. I wish Dave never would have fucking left. To be honest,
yeah, but
like I don't really like Megadeth. I like some of the stuff they do. I respect that they've been around forever, but I think like if Dave Mustaine could have stayed in Metallica, I think Metallica would have been infinitely better than what the fuck they are now.
so in contrast to Servium's crazy, I love the Beatles are the greatest thing since Rubber Soul Sneakers conversation. To me, the most influential band in all of rock history is Exodus.
Exodus.
Okay, so Exodus is where the
Man, I
lead,
love you because we're.
it's where the lead
I just
guitarist,
want to.
it's the lead guitarist of Metallica comes out of there.
Yeah.
Gary Holt drives Exodus for years, and then when Henneman dies, he's the one that steps up and he rocks out with Slayer for 10, 12 years or whatever it
Holy
was.
shit.
So he's there good. He's
Point.
still playing with Exodus.
Yeah.
But
Point.
all of those guys, they're the ones who stayed metal. So when you talk big four bands, you had Anthrax,
From
you
America,
had
though. You're talking America.
Slayer, yes,
Okay.
Anthrax, Metallica,
Slayer.
Megadeth, and Slayer.
Negative.
Those were the big
Okay.
four, right? They had the big four concert reunion thing where they finally like hugged and made up, and Mustaine played. I think they played "Am I Evil" all together on stage and whatnot. Um, but
Yeah.
that band,
Yeah.
Exodus, is where all the longevity came from. And to this day, they still play, they still release albums. I mean, to me, the greatest metal riff of all time is Death Amphetamine, written by Gary Holt, who's their guitarist now, plays with Slayer. Uh, Dude is phenomenal. Like it, but that to me is Anthrax was okay to me, but you could take them out and put Exodus there, and I think that that's actually the really big four. So
Exodus was always like a big underground. Not a lot of people knew who they were when I was in high
they
school.
stayed a metal band.
All right. So I'm going to give you my favorite band of all time. I've seen them entirely too many times. I've now taken my daughter to see them. She loves them. Where do you come out on Iron Maiden?
I don't think that you get a lot of the Exodus's Metallica without Iron Maiden.
Really?
Um,
So what you're telling me is I should go back and listen to some Exodus.
so to me, Iron Maiden was like this. That was like the second British invasion, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
with all
absolutely.
that was happening,
Yep.
the thing about Iron Maiden was Iron Maiden didn't compromise on anything. A lot of those bands of that era changed who they were so they could get paid on the radio. Because
Great
back in the
point.
day, if you weren't getting spun, you didn't get any money.
Great point.
And Iron
Because they
Maiden didn't give a
realized you could
shit.
make money from performance. That's where
Iron
you made all your
Maiden,
money.
Iron Maiden only made albums, so they had new music to tour with. Touring is what they gave a shit
Yes.
about.
That is,
And so
man,
that whole
this Steve guy
that
is all right. I'm glad I got this guy on the podcast.
that whole game plan that they set up is, to me, is what the successful bands ended up following.
Yeah.
And then you get guys who are like, and I heard an interview, and whatever your take is on Ed Sheeran. I mean, that guy's, when it comes to pop, he's written, I think he run 25
Yeah,
number one
he's just a
songs, and
little
like,
too fucking weird from a
he's a
person.
weirdo, but he wrote a
Yeah,
lot of
no,
music.
no, I
And
look, I will never
his answer
discredit,
was,
I won't discredit English pop because they
his
are what
whole
they are.
thing was, I only write albums so I can tour.
No, he's right.
That's what I care about doing, is
Because
going to
that's
play
when you
live in
own
front
the
of
meat,
people.
that's when you own the profit.
Right. And so, regardless of what anybody does, that was kind of Iron Maiden's thing, was we make albums, but their albums, some people say they may sound all the same, which I don't necessarily agree with, but they were uncompromising. If you put on Iron Maiden, I don't care who you are, you recognize who they are. There's no off track.
Yeah.
Whereas you could take that terrible Saint Anger, that fucking snare from the
No, you're
Saint
right.
Anger
Man.
album.
Fucking
Oh,
Metallica had so many
when that
great
song came out,
songs.
nobody knew that was Metallica unless it was announced on the radio. It didn't
Yeah.
sound like them. And
Right.
so,
No. And they did it on purpose, which is weird.
well, not only that, but I think that they were trying to sound like the new metal bands of the day. They wanted to try, oh, let's go with
Yeah,
like a
which
Slipknot
was the
vibe or a
point,
Mudvayne or anything like
which
that.
they
And
never had to do because they were already Metallica. Like they had,
no, they could
to me, it sounded like they didn't realize who they were.
power chords
Like,
and they were done.
bro,
Like
like
that's
you were
rinse
already the
repeat.
greatest metal American band ever. Like you had made one. You had made
Yeah.
Whom the Bell Tolls. You've done all of these things prior to you fucking selling out
Fade
on
to
the Black
Black, Welcome Home
Album.
Sanitarium,
Which,
like
whatever. I won't even say you sold out on the Black Album. I would just say you made a great fucking crossover album. Good for you. But from that point forward, you forgot who the fuck you were, man.
look at that time
And that
period
was 30 years ago, bro.
look at the time period. I can't remember how many. It's like 35 days, and in that period, the Black Album, Nevermind, Bad Motorfinger, I think, all those
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Soundgarden.
amazing
Yep.
Soundgarden
Well,
albums,
grunge killed them. Grunge
they
killed
all came out at the
Grunge
same,
killed
like
them.
within 30 days of each other,
Yeah,
like
grunge killed
that.
them. And I think
Um,
even if yeah, I think even who was Cottrell? Who was his band?
Alice in
Alice in
Chains.
Chains. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think they
That
just
would probably be my most played. Like when I play
yeah,
guitar, I
no, but I
probably
think
play
they
Alice
had
in
just
Chains the
came out
most.
with an album as well in that time fan. That time.
Dirt or one of those,
Yeah,
yeah. It's all
Dirt,
in the
Dirt.
same
Yeah,
time
yeah.
period. Yeah.
Yeah. No, look, grunge destroyed fucking everything that was hanging on at that metal era, right? Like if we go back and look at that time period, you had Metallica, right, with the Black Album. Fear of the Dark was Iron Maiden, that was 92. Um, I'm trying to think of other big albums between 91 and 93, but I mean, you had Nirvana, Nevermind. You had
10.
right? You had 10 Pearl Jam, 10. Like you had a huge shift in music. And when I say music, I don't I like I'm talking specifically about bands.
So
I'm talking
this is
specifically about bands. I'm not talking about pop. I'm not talking
this
about
is
rap. I'm talking
Steve's
about I'm talking
theory.
yeah, I'm talking about specifically music. You had a huge shift from post Black Album Metallica going forward.
Here's my theory on why bands like Metallica, Megadeth, and whatever got pushed aside.
Megadeth, yeah. I mean,
Think about when it comes to recreating a sound. I think from a record label standpoint, it was easier to kick out a bunch of Bush slash, um, I mean, whoever else was coming out at that time. Those generic sounding Pearl Jams, grungy
yeah, no,
stuff.
no, no, yeah, yeah.
It was
I mean,
easier to
Pearl
replicate
Jam had the
that.
talent, but like you go back and look on it, you'd be like, oh, who the fuck is Pearl Jam? But Pearl Jam did it first. That's the point. That's why they were who
It
they
was
were.
easier to recreate that sound than it
Yes.
was to find metal bands who didn't sound uncoordinated, because that's unfortunately what happens when you're playing blast beats nonstop is you either sound
No,
amazing or
it's
you
true.
sound trash. And so I think because record labels found it was easier to just recreate that generic stuff that it became. And then you've got like the 99 era when you start getting new metal, which whether you love them or hate them, the Limp Biscuits of the world, the Corns, that kind of stuff came out. And yeah, I didn't like the rap stuff, but when it came to like the guitar West Borland stuff, Limp Bizkit was amazing on that stuff.
I mean,
The
I would say
personality of Limp
I
Bizkit, I
like
wasn't a huge fan of, but
in that era, I'll be honest with you, like I gravitated to Korn because they were doing something unique. They had the six string guitar, like you were hearing a sound that you had never
a
heard
seven string,
before.
yeah,
Or
that's what
seven
West
string, I'm sorry,
Borland.
seven string. You were hearing the seven string, you were hearing a sound you never heard before. It was unique. And you could play back into the lyrics of Jonathan Davis with his, abuse thing, and that played at a very minimal level for young
Goth
adults,
kids,
but
yeah.
it played for a minute. But at the going forward, like I will give Korn credit, and I will say I talk to my brother about this every couple of months. I'm like, bro, can you believe the band that me as a fucking like getting made fun of for wearing the t-shirt in eighth grade, you being laughed at as a senior in high school, carrying that on to the second album as you as a fucking freshman in college, me as a freshman in high school. Now this band is somehow 20 plus fucking years later still touring. And
Yeah, and that's after going through
but they're
addiction and
they're
recovery and
fucking
coming back together and doing all
right.
the other
Like
shit
they're
that
still
came along with it.
touring. And I don't get me wrong, like I don't listen to them anymore. Like they don't interest me anymore, but they still have they've done what they've done and created a market that's enduring. Like they've managed to do what the Iron Maidens, the Metallicas, the Megadeth, they've done that. The Slayers, they've created that market and that fan base that will always be there for them. Whether it's me
I
with them or not, even though I was there initially, I'm not there anymore, but they've created that market that will always be there with them. And that's fucking incredible. That is
Music is
incredible because
always led by counterculture, and that's what they
right,
are.
but like when you go back to those bands, like you would never think a Corn or a fuck like you would never think they'd last to this period. You never would think.
No, you're. What's
Absolutely.
funny is if you listen to like
We're going on
Corn,
30 years. Literally, 94 is when their first album. It's 2020. Like it's
if
30
you
years, bro.
if you listen to Corn,
And Deftones, we talked about that earlier as well.
Deftone. By the way, worst band I've ever seen in my entire life.
Holy shit,
Unfortunately,
really?
I've seen
Wow.
them twice, and both
Live?
times
They're
it
the
just
worst?
life. I just they were
Wow.
not
Why do you
for
say that?
whatever. One of them was in a festival. One of them was in a regular concert, and it just
Okay, let's not
whether
go festival. I always discount festivals, but why was the regular concert
they just didn't sound good. I don't know if it was a sound guy thing or
sound like the
they
timing was
sounded
off or the
mushy. It
set?
was you couldn't understand anybody. The music was kind of blah. It was just I
Wow.
don't. It, honestly, if I had to describe it, it's like they didn't want to be there. Like they were going through
Oh
the motions, but
wow.
they didn't want to be
Where was
there.
this at?
The first time was in North Carolina, and the second that was the festival, and the second one was in Colorado Springs.
That's wild.
Um,
Yeah,
so
because I've seen Iron Maiden 5 times, and like every time I'm like, this is the most precision based band. Like everything's incredible on the massive stage where you've got 30 plus thousand people watching you, and like they perform everything flawlessly. Like
yeah,
that's
well, I mean, there's
wild.
bands like studio bands that are amazing, like Def Leppard. I mean, they've admitted
Yeah,
that like
yeah, yeah,
we write
yeah.
stuff in the studio and then we have to figure out how to play it live because there's so much going on in
Yeah,
there.
Iron Maiden doesn't do that.
But then you look at like the music of the era and who discovered um, Limp Bizkit, Corn, who
Yeah,
discovered Stained, Corn. Like
yeah,
all those guys kind of came from that same
yeah.
world,
No,
and they were
it's a good point.
and
But Korn has been the only one that's been good live, right?
I saw Limp Bizkit. They were great. Now it was a weird
Okay.
concert. So
Okay.
the
Was it
opener,
a tour?
it was a
Was it
tour.
like
The
okay,
Billionaire
was it
Pirates
the
tour.
Warp Tour? No, what
No,
was it?
Billionaire Pirates tour.
Billionaire
The
Pirates.
opening act. This was at Fort Bragg.
Okay.
The opening
They were at
act.
Fort Bragg.
They
Holy.
weren't at Bragg, but it was in Fayetteville. The opening act was System of a Down when
Oh shit.
Sugar
Okay.
first came out. Either Sugar or Sweet Pea. I can't remember one of those, but they just hit the radio. So they played first. Method Man and Redman played second,
Hell yeah,
and
man.
then Limp Bizkit came on, and they were phenomenal. But that I'm being a guitar guy, and at that time being brand new to the guitar,
Yeah.
I
So
stared at Wes Borland the
you're
entire time.
critical. You're
Like,
critical.
what is that
Oh,
guy doing?
and you always have it. You'll always be
Yeah.
critical, no matter what your level of talent is.
Oh,
You're just
100%. I mean, even the bad guys that are selling albums, like, hey, they're selling albums. It's just
yeah.
like,
No,
people,
but
I
you're
don't
right
like
though.
your book.
But
Hey,
you're
I
listening to
sold
that
books,
like
though.
you're listening to it like, hold on, what the fuck are we doing right now?
Yeah. And then the like little things that they steal from each other. It's like weird to listen to like some bands. Like there's a Megadeth song and then there's a Metallica song. They're the same song, different lyrics. The Megadeth one is played 1,000 times faster. Mechanics and I drawn a blank, but anyways, so they have to. It's the same song, and you just like you listen to like how are they doing it? Well, not Kirk Hammett, James Hetfield is playing the song one way, and the same song, even though it's played faster, the way the finesse and all that stuff that Mustang's doing is completely different. It has a completely different vibe, and you're just like, well, how do you get that? And my dad explained it to me one time and because I grew up with him having a guitar around the house all the time.
He's a music guy.
He's a music guy. I never played when I was a kid, but he always had a guitar around, and it was one of those things. It doesn't matter what guitar or what amp. If you put a guitar in Clapton's hand, he's going to sound like Clapton.
Yeah.
If you put a guitar in Slash's hand, he's going to sound like Slash. And
Yeah.
if you put a guitar in your hand, you're going to sound like shit. So I've just lived up to that mantra the entire
That's awesome.
time. Yeah.
Love that.
So
So okay, let's go that route. Who's your favorite guitar player?
probably Zach Wild, only because
Really?
so how long that guy played with Ozzy is amazing.
Yeah.
Do you know what the first riff he wrote for Ozzy was?
Was it Crazy Train?
No, No More Tears. Crazy Train was
No More
Rose.
Tears.
That was his first riff he ever wrote. That guy went from not playing at all to playing as the lead guitarist for Ozzy
Why did he go?
in less than 5 years.
Why did that happen?
So Randy Rhoads died in a plane crash because he got high, got in an airplane to Florida and crashed it. He's buried in California.
We went through a wild stretch with that whole Randy Rhoads, and there was a lot of musicians going through.
Right. So Lee and everybody. So
yeah,
when he picked up Zach had only been playing the guitar for like 5 years.
He was 24 when he got with Ozzy, right? Wasn't he? He was
like 19.
Oh, was he that young?
Yeah, he was.
Like
really
I know,
young.
I remember him being very young. He was just.
I don't know.
Man. Like the dude.
The fact that he could be around Ozzy for that many years and he's not.
He
never did drugs. He drank beer.
Let's talk about that. Let's think about like this is Ozzy Osbourne.
The guy's famous for eating
literally the biggest fucking metal
and having 2-liter bottles of Coke filled with Coke. And then he never did drugs, never did any of that. And what's crazy is do you know who the bass player was in that time period for Ozzy?
I do, but his name escapes me.
Mike Inez, who ended up being the bass player for Alice in Chains.
Alice in Chains, that's right. Yep.
So
there you go. Wow. So you got literally the greatest musicians.
Well, it's Ozzy, so everybody's
That's fucking wild.
He is famous for playing the pentatonic scale. Now, if you ask Dempsey, it's the worst thing in the world. He hates the pentatonic.
Well,
scale.
Dempsey doesn't know shit about fuck because he works on an oil rig. So Dempsey, I
He
love you,
he
but
he hates it,
sorry.
which is fine. To
How
each
you
their
can
own.
hate the pentatonic scale? I don't know. It's just literally the basis of every metal fucking solo in the history of planet Earth,
The,
but that's cool.
but if you listen to Zach Wild play it, it doesn't sound like the pentatonic scale. He's also playing 7 billion miles an hour, so I get that. But
That's what I'm saying. Like when you play at speed, makes
yeah,
things
it's
very different.
insanity.
I
So
do love Dempsey. So I don't know if you'll make it 2 hours and 44 minutes of me and Steve, but more cool. But go ahead.
I have a picture of me and him together, and he's not nearly as tall as he makes it out to be.
No, he's
So
4'6".
but that's always been my thing is like watching him is he's always been a master of that. And to follow a guy like Randy Rhoads and to be able to
Yeah, that's not easy.
play for Ozzy and be that is an incredible talent.
He, Ozzy,
He's
to
coming
Ozzy's
here.
credit, he found Rhodes, he found Zach Wild. He found literally two of the craziest guitar players you'll ever find. We don't do
The
that anymore. That's
no,
like, let's just go back to like post Zach Wild. Name the next fucking great
I don't
American
even know who
guitar
played
player.
after. I think
Name the next one.
I don't
Who's
know.
the next?
I don't
Who's
know.
post Zach Wild?
I don't know.
I can give you some good dudes
I
metal.
know who was
Right?
post Inez
No,
because
but I
that's
can
when
give
he
you some
got
good. I can give you some good like metal bands, early 2000s or whatever. I can give you some, but no one's gonna know who the fuck those dudes were.
no
And the music's great. It just didn't cross. It never had a chance of crossing over.
right.
It never had a
And
chance.
the crazy part about Ozzy is Ozzy has been around so long that he was your grandpa's band, your dad's band, and
Yep.
your band at the same time.
Yeah.
That is unheard of. I mean, listen, the Rolling Stones are still touring somehow. I
Oh
don't know
yeah, no, my
how
dad. Yeah, I mean, and I give my dad all the credit in the world. I'm like, yeah, you're right, Dad. Like the fucking Rolling Stones are amazing, but what have they done in the last 40 years?
played the same seven songs.
Yeah,
That's all. But
I mean, and it's cool, and that's why like I'll go to him and I'm like, Dad, will you come? And we haven't got there yet, but I'm like, Dad, do you want to come to like an Iron Maiden concert with me and your daughter? Because I've taken my daughter to Iron Maiden. Like I'm like, Iron Maiden's still making music. Like
the
they're 65 years old and still making music. They got another album coming out this year. Like they're still world touring. They're still just banking cash. Oh,
the
and selling
my
out albums in arenas everywhere. And like, come
my
with me, Dad. Just come
favorite
watch them. Just
my
watch
favorite
them
thing
play.
about Zach Wild is there's a video you can look it up on YouTube. And they, a lot of times they'll like do this video where like the guy's, oh, I'm playing a 1965 Telecaster, blah blah blah, and then he'll play a song.
Yeah.
They gave him a Hello Kitty guitar, like a
Oh,
pink
shit.
acoustic Hello Kitty, and he plays a really really good version of NIB on it. But Zach is still playing all over the place. Obviously, he still has his band, and then he plays with Ozzy once in a while. He helped induct him into the Hall of Fame. And then he's got Zach Sabbath, which is his cover band of Black Sabbath, which, by the way, for everybody listening, they're coming to Lawrence in a week. So if you could buy 1,000 of these books so I can have $2,500 to get VIP and a stage played guitar, that'd be amazing. Thanks for helping me out.
So I'm going to tell you this, Steve. I need you to go listen to a band called Onward.
I'm writing it down.
All right. Write this down. Onward. Now, their lead singer, he died a few years ago, 38, 39 years old, I think it was. But several albums they did. Onward, Eva Will Follow is one of the main songs. But go ahead and listen to Onward. The guitarist is a specific individual who makes these bands, but their singer was incredible, but he died. I think he was in a car crash. And I'll get you some more information and I'll text it to you. But like that band is fucking incredible. Two albums from Onward. They're fucking amazing. Like you've
To
got
me, the metal band, and it's sludge metal specifically. So you're talking about Down, which is like an amazing super band because it's got half a crowbar. It's got some, the lead singer for Pantera and whatever in it. Um, you've got that band. You've got Corrosion of Conformity, which I'm a huge Corrosion of
yeah,
Conformity
they
fan.
opened up for Metallica when I saw them in Orlando in
I I
1997.
almost named my daughter Pepper Keenan. My wife vetoed it at the last minute, but that was going to be her name. But sludge metal wise, the band that didn't make it that I wish um, was Acid Bath, and that's a huge Dempsey pull. That man loves Acid Bath. And their bass player was in a car, got hit by a drunk driver, and died. And the band decided they were never going to do anything again. So their lead singer Dax, he's done a couple things, and he's the lead singer of another band, and they've done some, they've released one album, what Agents of Oblivion. But that's the one band where if I could go back in time and like, hey, these guys need to make more albums, it'd be Acid Bath, because they're all over the place. They were from like the creepy metal stuff, like pre Marilyn Manson stuff, to just straight, that underground, like New York City bar metal stuff that was going on back in the day. So yeah, their Acid Bath is phenomenal, and Dempsey will be happy that I shouted out somebody from Louisiana.
Yeah, I mean, good for Dempsey, but it's like, that's cool.
Poor guy.
Yeah,
Poor guy.
but
By the way, he's in the book. I feel bad for the guy. But
is he in the book? Okay, he was all he was in
there's no missing it.
He was in
There's no missing it. I promise you, you're going to read that and go. I guarantee you, if when Dempsey reads the book or somebody reads it to him, he's going to get to that part, and his exact words will be that motherfucker. That motherfucker. Yeah, it's going to happen.
Somebody reads it to him. Yeah. So, go check out Onward, because that band and their two albums before the singer died. Their music's incredible. An incredible guitarist. And I know the guitarist names. You know what? Let me look this up while I have it at this, because I shouldn't just say, hey, the band, because the Onward band is who they are because of the singer. Onward band guitarist. This dude is incredible because he does a lot of crazy shit post all of that. Toby Knapp. That's his name. So Toby Knapp, please look this man up. Toby Knapp. TOBYKNAPPP Knapp. Toby Knapp. That dude is a fucking ridiculous individual when it comes to the guitar, especially from a metal position. He does some incredible stuff. And the band Onward, I think he did 2 albums with, early 2000s. Great music. The singer, that's the singer I'm talking about. He died in a car crash. But his voice was really good. Like, he had really good cadence with the fucking metal theme. Like, I feel like they had a really good album, or not a really good album, but a really good band put together to produce music. And, like, shit fucking sucks. Like, we talk about this from Metallica, right? Like, look what happened with fucking what was the bassist name for Metallica again?
Cliff Burton.
Cliff Burton, yeah. Like, you look at this, like, man, that's a really unfortunate event for a fucking bus accident, and like the only guy to die is the bassist, Cliff Burton,
and he was only in that seat off of a coin toss, right?
Yeah,
so
right, and a lot of people say that like this band would be completely different if it wasn't for him dying. Like, I don't know if that's true or not. Maybe it is, but
I just so there are different kinds of people, and anybody who's been in a leadership position knows this, right? So you've got like the personalities, right? There's always that guy in the locker room who like jumping, laughing, getting everybody in a good mood, like getting everybody pumped. Then there's the guys who are just like off in the back in their own head, ready to go rip somebody's head off, right? And then there's the glue guys, right? Who may not get all the credit, but they're the ones that hold the fucking building together.
Yep.
And to me, that is what Cliff Burton was to that band, as we held it together. And do I think that substance abuse wouldn't have caught up with him and the rest of the band like it did everybody of the era? Who knows what it would have been?
Maybe.
But I definitely think that if they successfully stayed together long term, I don't think they would have gone as mainstream.
So, but and that's where I come back to it with you, because I don't know. I really don't know. And I'm only deferring this to you because maybe you do know better than me. You're older than me. You probably had more connection to this band, but did you think that, and I can go back and say, hey, maybe this is true, because like, I feel like Metallica, and I don't know what music fest it was. Like, there was a performance where it was Cliff Burton doing the bass line of something that led into something else at a music festival. And it was like, wow, they're really highlighting the bass. Very Steve Harris of Iron Maiden, right? Like, this was like, the bass guitar is actually very fucking important. And we have a really talented bassist, and we're going to showcase him.
and then
He was
died
one of
very
the
shortly.
guys. So a lot of times in a band, they call the drummer and the bass the rhythm section or
Yep.
the timekeepers, right? So the ones,
Yep.
so when the bass drum hits, you should always hear it. And there's like a methodic theory that goes along with all of it. He wasn't that at all. If you listen to the bass lines of
Was he
what he's playing versus what the band is playing, like the guitarists are playing, they're in the same key. They ain't the same fucking song. And
was he writing early Metallica songs? Was he
so
getting writing credit?
I don't know if he got writing. I know he was
Because like
right. I
we go
mean,
to
their first album was Kill 'Em All, right?
yeah.
And there's a lot of like, there's some cover stuff in there. But he anesthesia, pulling teeth. That was, I don't know. You hear the tape start, bass solo, take one, and he goes in and plays that. He used to play it live too, and that was something bass players didn't play. There was no guy
Yeah.
doing bass solos. It's kind of like
No.
the drummer
No.
from Led Zeppelin doing drum solos back in the day.
Yeah.
There was people of the era, but nobody touched that guy. And so to me, that was he was like part of the personality. And so when they lost that piece of the personality, the music had to change. Like it wasn't going to stay the same. And also, you can tell that I don't think the band when they came out with because I think his first album was Justice when Jason Newsted played for him. That was his first album with them. And if you go back and listen to that, I want you to tell me on any song you can hear the bass because it doesn't exist. It is tuned so low you can't hear him.
And
And
that
to
is
me, that was more of a that's Cliff's spot, and we don't want to replace it yet.
yeah, but
And
that's also
so
like that's the time period of those bands, the bands who are that big, because this is where I go back to Steve Harris for Iron Maiden. He's the primary songwriter. He's the bassist. You cannot listen to any Iron Maiden song and not hear prominently throughout the song the fucking bass
that's not
because
the only. I mean, look at
like he wrote the
Motley Crue.
songs.
Look at Motley Crue. Their bass player wrote all their
Yeah.
music,
Yeah.
and he had to write it in a specific key because it's the only key that the lead singer could sing it. So,
Yes.
um,
Very true.
yeah,
Very true.
I definitely think that there was a personality thing. I think losing him affected the band a lot. And I think that they unfortunately shit on Jason with the way they did all of that. And I mean, even Jason will admit to you, like, yeah, the first time I heard it, I was pissed because you couldn't hear a fucking thing I was playing.
But let's go
Uh,
back to that though, man. Like those guys were like, where did we lose the character of bands? We lost the characters. Like these are characters. We're talking about guys. If I told you, you and I lived through this, but if I like, let's present this to our kids. Like these would be characters. Are there any characters right now that we could write a modern day version of metal or rock or anything that's considered heavy rock or heavy metal or any of that and be like, hey, these are the bands. Here are the characters. We don't
no,
have that.
it doesn't
Like
exist
honestly,
anymore.
like
And
seriously, we don't have that. We don't have the Cliff Burtons. We don't have the Steve Harrises of Iron Maiden. We
I
don't
don't
have the
know
James
if
Hetfields. We don't have the guys who made up the Dave Mustaine. We don't have these dudes anymore.
one of my favorite bands growing up, and they don't get nearly enough credit, was Faith No More.
Yeah,
And
because of the singer. What happened to the singer? What did he do?
what's crazy about the singer and the lead and the guitarist, they fucking hate each other. I mean, they've kind of
Faith No
patched things
More
up
was a
over the years,
great band. Great.
but they wrote
The
the
mid
music the way
'90s
that
had some great fucking music, dude.
it was all
Great fucking
strife. They
music.
were so pissed off being in the studio with each other that you could
Great
feel it in
music.
the music.
Yeah.
Nowadays, everything unfortunately is overly produced. But if you look at stuff like Exodus, and I've talked about Gary Holt, who's
Exodus.
fucking phenomenal, he writes their music. And I honestly believe the reason why Exodus is still Exodus to this day is because he's the one that still writes their music. So it still has a personality. Unfortunately, when you lose a member of a band and you bring in somebody else and you either ask them to help write, it's going to have a different personality. But on the other side of it is if you say we don't want you to write, but you're missing the old guy's personality too, it's still changing the music. And so
Yep.
unfortunately it's just a product of circumstances. And there are some bands who have been able to change players and been able to survive it. And there's bands that just have crumbled under it. And unfortunately for me, personally, I think the mainstream part of Metallica has kind of ruined their old stuff for me. I still play their old stuff. I couldn't tell you after Saint Anger, I don't know if I could even name an album, honestly.
No, post Saint Anger, they had one album, I think in 2008. Death Magnetic. I
Something,
think they had some
something,
good.
yeah, Death
Yeah,
Magnetic or
Death
something.
Magnetic
And
had
then
a
they
few
just
good
had the
songs
one
on it.
47 seasons or 75 seasons, whatever the fuck that name
Yeah,
was.
then they had a few good songs. They've always had a few good songs. That's what I mean. They'll write a few good songs. They don't make good albums anymore.
No, and I think a lot
That's
of
the
that has to
problem.
do
Like
with
because they like I'm being very honest as a like I grew up loving Metallica. Like I was part of the One era. Like One was my favorite song forever.
yeah, I was a Welcome Home Sanitarium guy. And so
Yeah.
like everybody's like Master Puppets is amazing. I'm like, yeah, but have you heard this song? That thing is
Yeah,
the
yeah,
shit. Because
yeah.
it goes
Like
through so many fucking emotions.
yeah, like
Um,
I mean those are great songs,
think
great
about the
albums.
2000s era, right? So you're talking about Iron Maiden, Exodus, Metallica, Megadeth, all great solos. And then you hit a time period where I don't know if there was a single fucking solo in a song on the radio.
No,
Sting
you're
didn't
right.
play them.
No, you're
Korn
totally
didn't play
right.
them.
You're totally right.
So it was one of those. We don't need you to play solos. We need you to recreate that same exact, 4/4
But
count
that's American
bullshit
radio.
metal.
And I will tell you
Yeah,
that's American radio because I know for a fact, like when I go back to Iron Maiden as an example, I go back to English radio and what their individual solos were as singles.
yeah. I mean, it's very
Never,
different.
never, never would play in the United States. Never.
Well,
It
another
played
thing that
over
was,
there because that's British radio, right? British radio has two things. They have British pop. They have the biggest pop stars in the world and British rock or metal, whatever
the
the fuck you want to call it. And those fucking bands over there in Britain are huge and they transcend all of music and they make it over to the States because people love the fucking British pop bands. They love the British rock bands.
yeah,
Like,
again, and British bands have always been very good at the counterculture thing.
yeah, but they
Um,
also, they also don't sound British. They sound American.
no,
Like
you're
they
very,
sing.
very true, very
They,
true. I mean, listen, I don't think anybody until you hear Billy Idol have a conversation. I don't think anybody in the 80s and
yeah,
90s knew
no, no,
Billy
no, no,
Idol was
you're right,
British till he
man.
spoke.
100% right.
Well, nowadays you look at like metal, and I don't even think the best metal is coming out of the United States anymore. I mean,
Oh, no, no, it doesn't
whatever
anymore.
you
Like
think about
it
it, the
hasn't.
Parkway Drives and
We are, and I would defer only because I think you just observing you. I think you maybe have a good like grasp on maybe American metal, but I would say we don't have it anymore, man. It's all
no,
in the
no.
UK. It's Iron Maiden as a legacy band, but then there's others, and then it's all like it's all like I love like this. One of my favorite bands is a Swedish all female band, Burning Witches. I love that
Uh,
fucking band.
where were
That
they
band is
from?
fucking incredible.
So I was big into Godsmack, late
Okay.
90s, early 2000s
Yeah.
era. And so I've seen them probably more than anybody that I've seen, just for several reasons. They just showed up at stuff that I've been at. But they had a band, all female. I believe they're Finnish, though. Maybe they might be Swedish, but Drain STH. And didn't make it very big. They toured with them in the States. But that band, if you played them today, people would be like, what the fuck am I listening to? Like Ginger, I think
Yeah.
Ginger's from Ukraine.
Yeah.
She does the melodic, she has an amazing voice, and then she does the deep growl stuff all on her own. I showed my son who's 12, and he's like, I think he's got a crush on her now because he's like, dude, that chick is badass. But that's what Drain STH was back in the
Yeah.
day. And for whatever reason, it didn't take hold then. But now, that's what
Well, I mean, that's what's
is
going on with Burning
kicking everybody's
Witches, right?
ass.
Like I've been watching Burning Witches for 5 years, right? And I'm seeing them progress. Been to four of their concerts here in the United States. Each one gets bigger and bigger. Like they're they just enlisted a U.S. guitarist from the Iron Maidens, who's actually an Iron Maiden cover band,
Yeah.
Courtney something. I can't remember her full name. But no, that band, the Burning Witches, is fucking incredible. They're great artists, they're great musicians, and their whole niche is that like, hey, we're a all female metal band, and good for them. But they actually do it really well, and
But they're a metal band.
yeah,
Unlike, I mean, think about the 90s when we're talking about music kind of falling apart. I mean, that what all woman band came out then? Kitty. They no knock on Kitty. They sold a hell of a lot of albums, but
Yeah, but
I think that was a niche that everybody's got a chick band, but it
yeah,
didn't last.
let's go with what you decided, right? Let's go back to early '90s grunge. It was grunge. Like,
Right.
that's what it was, right? That's what it was.
How
Grunge.
many personalities made it out of grunge?
None. Grunge ended. Grunge ended American mainstream music.
Yeah.
I'm being honest. Like grunge ended American mainstream music. We went through a period with hip hop. We went through a period with rap. But when
There's a lot of bands though that I
when
do think
music
get
came
thrown
back
into the
though,
grunge era that weren't grunge. Like
it took
Soundgarden to
it.
me wasn't grunge,
No, but it took
but
until
they're
like
from
the
the
early
same locale, so that's
2000s
they
to
kind of
get
got roped
like.
into it.
It took until the early 2000s to get back to just regular music back.
Right.
And
Yeah,
I'm
you're right.
talking like pop. Like I'm like grunge killed music in the United
Yeah.
States. It really did because the next thing that followed was fucking hip hop. That's all it was.
Well, yeah, you had that poppy. I can't remember the dude, Robbie something. He was a British dude. That was when like pop, everybody, the Carly Minogues of the world, like
Yeah,
everybody
no,
was.
no, Carly Minogue. I love Carly Minogue, but she was British. Like Carly
Yeah,
Minogue, she's a
nothing
British
ever
chick,
made it out
man.
of that
And she,
era. Like
like,
nothing did.
no, it was like the early 2000s, late 90s were fucking wild. Um, and I think the only bands that really survived it were bands who were actually talented musically, and that's why I go back to Iron Maiden. Like Iron Maiden's never
Yeah.
struggled with this. They've never struggled.
Um,
Metallica's never struggled with this. People can argue against Metallica, and I'm one of them because
but
trust me,
do you
I
think Metallica is selling tickets the way they are right now
no,
because the
no, no,
music they're coming out with is good or the
dude, I
nostalgia is
fucking
amazing?
hate Metallica. I hate Metallica today. I love Metallica growing up.
But you would go see them for the nostalgia of them playing the old
No,
shit.
the last time I saw Metallica was 1996 in the Orlando Arena, and I saw them when it was the Load tour, and I
Oh
saw them.
yeah.
And you know what they did? They did a 3 hour tour. They played two songs from the Load album, and I thought it was great because the other 2 hours and 45 minutes from that album or that concert were all the old stuff. Now, if I would go to them today, I honestly wouldn't because I've known what they've produced from 1996 to now, and everything that they've done since, despite the here's a good song here, here's a good song there, like
I think I
they're
would
not any
go
good,
just
man. They're
I would
not a
go
good
just to
band.
watch them play the old shit.
Yeah, but that's my point. They're not a
Yeah.
good band, and
No,
and
no, their
that's
music now is ass. I'm not debating that,
right,
but I would
and
go
that's
see
my
them
that's my
strictly for
issue
the
with them
nostalgia.
because my favorite band of all time is Iron Maiden, and Iron Maiden objectively still makes really good fucking music.
Yeah.
Like, and
No,
that's my problem
you
with
you are right. They don't
Metallica
make
because
anything good now.
I can't understand how Metallica with Hetfield, with Ulrich, with fucking Hammock, how they've managed like the bassist has been outsourced. Whatever. I'm not gonna hold anything against that man. He's not doing.
He's been
How
doing
have
it two
you guys
decades now,
gotten
though.
this bad at writing
Yeah.
songs? How are you this
The
bad? How
the
are you
single
this
best
bad at
thing that
music?
Metallica has done in the last 25 years, personally, is they took away Kirk Hammett's wah wah pedal because it just became where, like, if you ever listen to like Rage back in the day, where he had the little switch and he just did like funky sounds off of that,
Yeah, no,
that became
no.
all he was doing anymore.
Yeah.
And so they took that away and they made him right. And I don't think without it, I don't think he was able to, they just musically just don't appeal to me anymore. But I would go see them for the nostalgia of the songs that because they're playing a lot of stuff from um, the not so much the Black Album, all the stuff previous to that, Justice and Ride the Lightning and whatnot. But yeah, to me their best album of all time to me still gonna be Kill 'Em All, which the way
Kill 'Em
they
All,
got the
really?
name of
You think Kill 'Em All is their best
it's all a
album?
bunch of cover songs, but it was still real. They did phenomenal covers.
Who were they covering?
Um, oh man, King Diamond they did.
No, this is very interesting to me because I didn't realize that they had a bunch of cover songs on because that was their first
There was
album, right?
yeah. So there's two versions of that album. There's the regular one that I think you can just get, and then they had the old one that had all the extra shit on there. And that's why old school albums you could get a Kill 'Em All version that had "Am I Evil" on it.
Yeah, no, I do know
And
Am I
if
Evil.
you go get the album now, it doesn't
That's
have
covered.
Am
That's
I Evil.
covered. Isn't Am I Evil covered on their Garage Days
It was on
album?
Garage Days too.
Yeah.
Right, but it was originally they originally played it on the Am I, but you can't get it on Am I Evil anymore. Or not Am I on Kill 'Em All. So the original, the funny part is the visual that you get didn't come around until the Ride Lightning album. But originally, the album for Kill 'Em All was supposed to be called Metal Up Your Ass. That was Cliff Burton's idea, was call it Metal Up Your Ass. And it's that blue background from Ride the Lightning had the toilet with the knife coming out of it. And the record company wouldn't let him do it. And so they asked him, you got to come up with another name. And so he said, like, fuck it, Kill 'Em All. And that's how Kill 'Em All even became the album name. But
That's actually
they,
that's actually pretty funny because I do remember that what you're describing is that like, no, you don't get to do
the
that.
toilet with the knife. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so if you find somebody that has an old school tape of that, you can actually find where it had a bunch of the cover stuff on it. But you get the one now. I think there's only 8 songs on the one now, 8 or 10.
Yeah, no, that was kind of like the standard of metal albums
Right.
back then. It was like nobody ever wanted to have an album longer than 60 minutes. So, hey, if you,
Yeah, well, it became that, and then it became one of those. We're not going to be able to sell a cassette tape for more than $9.99 anyway. So we don't want to put too much business on it. We'll let you roll that into the next one, so we can get $9.99 twice.
Oh, you fucking executives, you fuck up everything one way or another.
Yeah, and then you get into the whole business. That's why you don't ever find these Freebird, 20-minute songs anymore on albums because they want to give that shit away for free. And you put nowadays, you hey, this album's gonna be $25 instead of $19.99 because it's got longer songs. Nobody's buying that shit. So
no, I mean, I think that is an absolutely great point, and I do feel bad for like my daughter growing up in this era because she listens to all this music. She finds all these old songs. She's like, Dad, have you ever heard this song? I'm like, of course I fucking heard the song. I was in fucking high school when it came out and it was like my life.
Yes.
And you're looking it up like right now and you're like, oh, wow, this is just a cool song. I'm like, no, you don't understand what it was like to actually live through this song. This was your life. Like this song dictated my mood when I went to school the fucking next day. Like
my daughter was going through and she listens to Taylor Swift, but then she turns around one day, it's like, Dad, do you like the song Custard by Slipknot? And I'm like, what?
yeah,
right?
I'm
like,
the same shit, but she's in the Star Set. And it's like we've been to Star Set concerts together twice. Like
so we're listening to old stuff and she's like, this is how I knew I was fucking old, right? So my daughter turns around and she was just trying to find the words. I don't think she intended to call it this. But she said, instead of saying, hey, Dad, I found this old song I think you'll like, and that's The Twist by Korn. She said, Dad, have you heard this Antique song? My Antique? Yeah, I was a grown-ass man when that song came out. What the hell are you talking about, Antique? I'm not an antique, right? So, yeah, it's weird. And I don't remember really going through it. Maybe, I said Waylon Jennings, right? I remember my mom and my stepdad going to see Waylon Jennings probably 3 or 4 times growing up. I used to go see him in the Orange Zone, San Bernardino.
That's crazy.
And
what would the equivalent of that be, though? What would the equivalent do you think that would be?
To today?
Would it be Metallica?
No.
Would it be like, because there's no American band bigger than Metallica. It wouldn't be Iron Maiden because they're not bigger than Metallica in the States. Like, what would be bigger what would be bigger than that? Like, who would be bigger than Waylon Jennings?
I think that what's crazy to me is I do think that worldwide there are some bands, the Slipknots of the world, and again the counterculture like thing, right?
Do you think Slipknot's that big though, man?
Have you ever seen Slipknot at the Download Festival? Go watch the video.
No, I respect. Trust me, don't
absolutely insane.
There's like 2 or 3 songs I really love from Slipknot. I respect them, but do I respect their reach? I don't, because I don't think they're that. I think they had a niche. I don't think they have legacy. If that makes sense. Like, do you think you're gonna be like a 45-year-old dude who's just like, man, I love me some Slipknot?
I think they have the same legacy I think they have the same legacy that Korn has.
Yeah. Oh, that's fair. No, that's fair. That's absolutely fair. That is fair. But I will
But
argue, I
worldwide,
think
I mean, you
I
go,
think Korn has a longer legacy because I think for whatever I don't know why, but I think Korn has managed to sustain themselves longer than Slipknot.
they have the same band members. I'll give them that.
No,
And
no,
I think the only original
dude,
member
dude,
left
I
of
love it.
Slipknot
I'm with you.
originally is Clown. I think he might be the only guy
Yeah.
still in the
No,
band
no,
from the original version.
I'm with
So
you. I think you're right. I think they're the same. I think they're the same band.
yeah, and so just change the scenery on it a
Corn
little
has way
bit.
more hits though. Corn is like the mainstream version.
Yeah, they do only because they're going to get significantly more radio play.
Oh,
But
for sure.
I think getting less radio play actually helps Slipknot sell
Well,
records.
Corn had Jonathan Davis. They had the front man. The front man's always important. We go back
Yeah,
to
and
Ozzy and
the fact that
these great guitar players we talked about. They don't mean shit without Ozzy. Like,
they Korn survived one of their guitarists going to rehab, finding God, and then finding a way to make it up with the band and come back. That is unheard of.
divine
And
inspiration,
so,
man. That's an easy play to me. To me, it's an
yeah,
easy
and
play. It's divine
I
inspiration.
I think that they eventually grew up, and which is wild to say. I mean, that's the reason why I think Guns N' Roses fell apart was because half the band couldn't grow up, right?
You're
So,
100% right.
and so I think
Guns N'
eventually, and
Roses and Van Halen. These should have been these should have
yeah,
been
don't
the
even get me
two
started on
greatest.
Van Hagar and all that stuff. So
They should have been the two greatest rock bands in American history. And what did they do? They squandered it. Both
yeah, to a point, I
both of them squandered it because they didn't want to be professional musicians. This is I go back to like I can hate on Metallica all I want. I can like give all the credit to Iron Maiden on the one. Those two bands, they took being musicians seriously. And
well, the
whether
other
you
side
like
of
the
it
route they
is
win, that's fine. But you can argue Metallica, Iron Maiden, they took musicianship seriously. Guns N' Roses, Van Halen, they didn't.
well, the
They
problem.
didn't
So
want to
where I
be
will disagree
serious.
with you is yes, I think that those two bands, Iron Maiden, Metallica, I think they took the musicianship seriously. Where I disagree with you on is I think Iron Maiden did an excellent job of balancing ego, and none of the other ones did.
Yes. No, no,
And
you're a
so,
1,000% right.
and
It was
so,
Steve
if you
Harris.
could have
They deferred to
convinced,
him. And yep, you're right. You're
yeah,
100% right, dude.
and that's one thing that I've always liked about Exodus is
And this is
there's
why I need to
no
really go
it's
back
this
and
guy's
explore. I
band.
need to really go back and
Yeah,
explore Exodus based on this conversation because I always know who Exodus was, but I
yeah.
will be honest, I've never truly listened to them. So I'm gonna go do it because of you.
Go listen to their first album and go listen to their most recent album and tell me
Okay.
how far they've changed. Best song, Death Amphetamine. It's like my favorite song. It's an amazing riff. The
But
guys come up with.
who was the member? You said there was a member that left for them and went to a different
So
band.
Gary, so Gary Holt is there. He's written all their music for the last 20 something years, whatever. He was their guitarist. He actually was taught how to play the guitar by Kirk Hammett.
Okay.
Kirk Hammett eventually left Exodus and went to Metallica.
Okay.
Eventually, Gary Holt, because Exodus was touring, but they weren't really making any music. He steps in and helps Slayer, stays with them for a decade, but he bounces back and forth. He's like, some days he's with this band, some days he's with that band.
Got it.
But because Gary Holt writes so much of their music, they have maintained the same personality. Whereas
That's crazy.
whereas these other bands, the Van Hagar's, Van Halen versions of the world, or Guns N' Roses when Slash and
Yeah. No, it's a
Duff
totally different
left,
band, man.
and they bring in Buckethead or some shit for the
Yeah,
spaghetti
yeah.
incident or whatever. It was just
Yeah, you can't
so.
fucking do that shit, man. It's so stupid.
Yeah, so I've actually met. I got a really good picture of me and my father with Slash. Met him at a USC game, and
But there's
it was
like
funny
this
because the
weird
kids from One
fucking
Direction were at the concert, and
there's
then
this
you got Slash in the back with a guitar, and one of the people in the front was like, "Who's the homeless guy?" I'm like, "Oh, one of the greatest guitar players of all time."
there's
So
like
him
this
and my
weird
father had a 45-minute conversation talking about music, which was pretty cool.
damn, I'm trying to think of who it was. Like if you would have called me an hour sooner, I probably would have get you the correct answer. But it's like it was it wasn't Slash, but it was someone who was the band member.
I don't even get it at this point. It is what it is.
Well, and then you got those
No,
guys,
oh,
man.
that's right. It was this band who Slash was the son of Billy Idol, and this woman who Billy Idol dated didn't marry, and it was the kid of this woman's like okay. All right, let me explain this better. So Billy Idol dated this woman who had a kid, and the kid ended up being Slash.
Billy Idol used to babysit, or yeah, used to babysit
Yeah.
sit for Slash. Yeah, I know
Right.
what you're talking
So
about. Yeah,
that's the
because most people
story.
don't realize he was
Yeah,
born in
that's the
Binghamton,
story.
England, right?
And that's the story.
Um,
But that's the thing, like, Steve, bro, like it's shit like that that cracks me up. It's like, hey, I'm and I can't remember who that individual was. No, I do. I'm sorry. Like, it's fucking David Bowie. David
oh
Bowie's
yeah,
dating a woman who has a
yeah,
kid whose son ends up being fucking Slash.
right.
Arguably the greatest American rock guitarist of all
But he's
time.
not. He was born. He's English. He's born in England.
Yeah. But
So
he's
it's like,
arguably the greatest
yeah.
American rock guitarist ever because we've
So
never had anyone in this country like Slash before. And Guns N' Roses fucked up everything just like Van Halen did because
so
they're idiots.
my son is a Boy Scout. So we went to camp in Michigan this year, drove all the way up there. While we were on our way, I gave them a lesson in metal. So I had to have something to stay
Hell
awake
yeah.
on a 12-hour drive. So we're listening to Exodus. We're listening. And I'm explaining.
We should probably
Did you
listen to
know that
Iron
Guns N'
Maiden.
Roses
That's
was a
cool.
super band?
Super band? What do you mean?
You know how you get bands like Velvet Revolver, where they've got the guys from, they had Duff and Slash from one
Yeah,
band, and
yeah. Well,
so they were two LA bands that became Guns N' Roses. So you had LA Guns and you had Hollywood Rose. So Slash was on one side, and what's his name was on the other, was with
Duff.
Hollywood Rose. No, I think
Yeah.
Duff was actually with Slash, but they ended up parts of Hollywood Rose and parts of LA Guns became one band. That's why they called Guns N' Roses, because they were a super band of two of the big LA bands back
It's
then.
one of the greatest band names of all time, though. Like,
The
Wait,
original
what?
cover of Appetite for Destruction, I don't know if you'll ever make a better, like a more recognizable cover than that one. Everybody sees that, you instantly hear the songs. I mean, you just know it. So
what the fuck happened?
I mean, ego. That's what happened. Well, ego and a
I
whole
mean,
lot
but
of
that
Jack
was,
Daniels, probably.
but no, but that was like, let's just, okay. Guns N' Roses. What year was that?
Ooh, that's 90. I mean, I think the Appetite for Destruction album came out in that same time period where Black Album and all that stuff. I think it's in that same time period,
Yeah,
that
it's
same
91.
45 days or whatever.
Anyway, yeah. Okay. So what happens next? What happens with all these bands next?
Well, at that point,
Iron
and
Maiden.
then they got pushed out of the way for Bush and Glycerine, right?
That was
And Lee.
94.
And you had that was what was on the radio
Yeah, it was
for whatever
grunge.
reason.
Grunge,
But the other
grunge
thing
and
is
everything that came after grunge.
you have to remember there was one tour that was ill-fated. I believe it ended in Montreal. Metallica and Guns N' Roses toured together, and that tour bombed because of Axl. And I believe
Really?
it's also the same tour. Oh yes,
Really?
yes. Montreal.
I
He got
Oh,
pissed off,
wow.
and they showed up 2 hours late for the concert. He played like half a song and left. And it's also the same concert, I believe, or the same tour where Hetfield got roasted from the Pyro was on that same tour. And I think that nobody grew up kind of thing. I think a lot of music listeners listened to that, saw them fall apart or whatever, and said, "Oh, they're a fucking mess." And that became the end of it. And it also started, the grunge thing was going on too, but it also became a how fast can we replicate this to make more albums, to make more money. And it was really easy to get Bush, also a British band, but who was on the radio at that time? Bush, Offspring, Green Day.
Have you heard my Bush Gavin Rossdale story?
No, you have to tell me now.
All right. So I went to SUNY State University of New York at Oswego to play college baseball, right? 2000.
Bush is playing at my school, SUNY Oswego. We are on a road trip and we come back. We are expecting to shower, do our normal shit in our locker room. Well, Oswego State University gave Bush the access to our locker room to shower and get ready for their concert. So
That's amazing.
we come walking through, and I will never forget. I love this dude. He's one of the funniest, the most genuine dudes I ever met. He was the senior at the time. He was our shortstop, Pat LeClaire. Pat LeClaire. Gavin Rossdale is like the shortest. Like he's like 5. He's all of 5'7". He's tiny. So Gavin Rossdale is like walking through our hallway from us coming out of our like, hey, we're back from our road trip. We're coming through the locker room. There's Gavin Rossdale walking through us, and Pat LeClaire's like, "Hey, Gav." He like stops and waves at his face. And Gavin Rossdale's all of like 5'6". Pat LeClaire's like he's not a big dude physically, but he's tall. He's like 6'1". He's like 170. He's like 6'1" and thin. And then Gavin Rossdale is every bit of like 5'6" and tiny. And he's just like, "Hey, Gav." And Gavin Rossdale's like, "Hey guys, like, hello." It's just hilarious.
Very gnomish.
It was so funny. And I just remember being a freshman in college, like, oh my God, that's Gavin Rossdale. He's so tiny and I love glycerine, but like, you're so small. Like, that's so, and that was like, I bring all that up to just be like, dudes are just dudes, man. Like, there's nothing special about any of these people, whether it's a band member, whether it's a military member. It's just like, dude, men are men.
I have never. There's you could look up to somebody, but like, damn, don't get a tattoo, right? There's a lot of people who are like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go get the Mets tattooed on my arm, or like what? Like, there's a limit to that. Like,
yeah,
I'm not doing that kind of. But the worship thing, right? And that was really big back in the day, and I still think there is. I think it shifted to politics now, but there is a lot of that. And then you go meet these people. Like I mean, like look, we meet Slash. This is 2015 October. Yeah. He does the national anthem for the USC UCLA game. We're down on the field. Literally, our seats are on the grass, and he's in our thing in our little booth that we're with us, and he's got his guitar and his bodyguards there. And I'm like, hey, any way I could go get a picture with Slash? And nobody had talked to him because, I mean, he looks homeless, right? So I remember my wife, she was following the Real Housewives of Orange County. She sends me a picture because somebody posted on Facebook or something where their seats were. And so I literally took a picture of that and texted it back to her because we had amazing seats for this game. And so they're like, yeah, let me talk to him. He goes over talking. He had Negan with him, his girlfriend. So he's like, yeah, come over. So my dad starts talking to him and they talk about music for a long ass time. And it was the weirdest thing. And my dad was like, hey, we appreciate it. And he just responded, thanks for treating me like a normal dude. And I didn't think anything of it at the time, but that's all they are, is just normal dudes. They just happen to be good at something.
Yeah.
And 100%. So, you know,
no, you have the right mentality, man. Like,
they're
not special.
Sibley he can write a great book, but you don't need to put
Sibley's a fucking dork, man. Like, he's like, I've hung out with him. He's a dork, but he's a good dork. He's fun.
He's a good dude.
Fun to hang out with.
Good dude. I have reached out to him, book stuff, and asked him questions about X.
Fucking dork. He's always fun to hang out with, but
never treated me like don't bother me. He's always
he would never do that. So. But also, like what you just said about anybody, it doesn't fucking matter. And if they give you the opposite, don't waste your time with them.
There's no point.
Most of these people that we like, whether it's music, whether it's authors, whatever the fuck it is, whether it's people you find outside of your circle who've been successful, if they aren't humble, if they aren't recognizing the people who've made them who they are, don't waste your fucking time with them.
The one thing I've learned as I creep to 50 is the ones that treat you like they're better than you. I love Sibley to death. He's never treated me anyway, so I wasn't talking shit about him.
No,
But
I know.
the ones who shit on people are the ones who are generally the most insecure. They do that because they're insecure. They know if they don't try
And
to
I'll be honest,
elevate
I would say
themselves,
like
they're going to be normal.
everybody you and I have talked about musically will be 100% honest with you. Um, and I'm not saying you're going to get a chance to talk to them. I'm just saying
Right.
like, given my experience, given what I've seen, given what I've known, given what I've heard, you're not going to run into that. You're going to run
Yeah.
into people who are very like self-aware. Hey, they're very respectful of the fans who've got them to where they are. And I'm not even as like you don't have to be like, "Oh, let me just dedicate X amount of hours to just hang out." No. Like these are people who will just be very real. They'll
Yeah.
acknowledge where they are. They'll acknowledge their position. They'll acknowledge you. They'll give you the respect, but that's it.
Yep.
It's simple.
The which is the best way to live, and that's one of the things that ego has ruined so many things for so many people. And if you just
Yep.
realize you're just a normal ass dude, your life would be better. Flashing back, so you asked what it was, and I think I can sum up what ruined music in one word.
Oh,
And I think
cool.
when I tell you this, it's going to make sense to you. Alternative. So the year I graduated
You say
to high
alternative,
school,
I say grunge. So where's the difference?
I'm going to explain it to you.
Okay.
So grunge had its metal-y moment. They weren't metal, but they had their niche, right? They were niche for anything. But these are the bands that were out in 1996 when I graduated high school. And tell me how far down the list I got to go before we run into somebody you consider to be metal, right? Or even
Okay.
great musicians. Even great
Okay.
musicians.
No, I'm looking forward to this. All right, go.
Smashing Pumpkins,
Oh,
garbage,
hey, hold on. Smashing Pumpkins it's a good start.
garbage.
Wait, go ahead.
The band garbage.
Oh no, keep going.
I'm not calling Smashing Pumpkins. Beck, Alanis Morissette, Green Day, Bush, Rage Against the
Wait,
Machine. They had moments.
hold on. Alanis Morissette, yes, very big at the time. Green Day, I hate them. They're still
But was
relevant
she
today.
was she anything other than dating Dave Coulier when she was underage? Was there anything about Alanis Morissette that wasn't just cookie cutter?
Well,
You could have
I
put
would.
her song and put anybody singing it, and it sells the same amount of records.
No, I'm not going to argue with you at that, but I'm going to argue with you as like here we are where we are at, mid 40s-year-old men. Like Alanis Morissette was a culturally relevant individual, whether we like it or not. She
Maybe,
was.
maybe
She was.
Green Day,
Same thing.
Bush.
I
I mean,
fucking
Bush
hate.
was famous because
I
that was
hate.
Gwen Stefani's husband.
I liked Bush. I hated Green Day. Both are relevant to today, and that like all right, Steve, I'm glad we're on this conversation because I want to bring this up to you. My daughter, literally 3 weeks ago, she sends me this text like, "Hey, Dad, um, I've got my I've got my passport. I'm looking to try and go like overseas and see some stuff. And I think what I really want to do and do it is musically. And there's this there's this music festival in England, and I want to go see Starset because they're there as like this third tier band. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. What's the headliners? Who are the ones that are actually like performing at the top of this Green Day? She's like,
But
Green Day? She's
is
like, Dad,
Green
it's
Day
Green
there
Day. I'm
for
like, you
any
know
other
what?
reason than nostalgia? They have. When's the last
That's
time they
my
came out with an
like,
album?
bro, I got my daughter who's 19 who loves Starset and Iron Maiden, and she's like, "Why is Green Day, Dad? Why is Green Day the headliner?" And I'm like, you know what? I don't really got a good answer for you, child. I really don't.
No, I mean Jim Blossoms, no doubt. Oasis,
Wait,
Everclear.
no, no, no,
I
keep
mean,
going.
Everclear
All
had
right, oh
two
wait, so we're
songs.
back at it. All right, go ahead.
Space Hog, The Rentals, Dishwalla, Dishwalla,
I know Dishwalla. I know the Space Hawk.
uh,
You said,
Collective Soul.
yeah, everybody loves.
Now, musically, they were fine for what they
Yeah,
were,
mid '90s collective.
but they certainly weren't rock. You know what I mean? And but the thing is you got to think in California at the
Is
time,
Candlebox on
in the,
that? Is
they will be, they will be. They you have to think. So in SoCal, in that time period, you had pirate radio, right?
yeah.
So um, I remember the apartment that is described in New California in my book. We lived there, and I remember listening to pirate radio. And they used to make these stupid commercials, like fake music songs. And they had this one where instead of Welcome to the Jungle, it was like a parody called Welcome to McDonald's. We got fries and chips. Anyways, but it was like counterculture. That was it. Well, they changed pirate radio. They sold it to like an easy listening. They turned it into at least easy listening. And K Rock was the only place you could listen to rock. And at the time, you could listen to Metallica, you could listen to Guns N' Roses, Iron Maiden. All those bands were on there. And then in that same time period, that is when Oasis, Smashing Pumpkins, all the rock stuff that we loved growing up, all disappeared because they could fill it in with stuff that was. Now, listen, I think Weezer's amazing I think they've got great songs. They're very, very catchy, etc. But that's what replaced the rock we're talking about. And so
wait,
it became easier to sell alternatives.
That was eighth grade for me. But do you think Weezer was a great band or a band who was a product of the times?
I think they are one of the only good bands that came out of that era.
Why?
Of alternative. Just like anything, if you're a metalhead, the riff, the drums, something catches you and draws you into the song, right?
No.
To me,
And this is I don't mean this to be. This is not.
They played songs that got stuck in your fucking head.
No, they were great songwriters. This is not meant to be argumentative. I just was curious to what you felt. Because
no, I do think that
I will tell you, like, they're songwriters.
I would go see today.
Yeah, they're songwriters. They're absolutely songwriters. I would go see it today, and I would have a great time. I could probably have a great time for 2 hours if I went and saw them. Yeah,
but that genre as a whole, that alternative era,
they're probably the only ones though. Nobody else stuck around.
I mean, Smashing Pumpkins, they did
no,
okay.
No, I like Smashing Pumpkins. That's fine. Like, okay, if you're gonna give me Weezer and Smashing Pumpkins, who else? So, who else?
Okay, here's one for you. Jars of Clay. Do you remember Jars of Clay?
I remember them. They had one song. They don't. That's not Smashing Pumpkins. That's not fucking Weezer.
I'm going through here. Tori Amos, like Marilyn Manson. Again, counterculture.
No, Marilyn Manson was a very specific.
The only reason why he sold records to me is I thought the music was okay.
They were a niche. Why he sold they were the beautiful people. Like they covered fucking the beautiful people. That's who they were.
They just wanted to make their parents mad. That's who went and watched them.
Exactly. So. And then you look at them now and you're like, okay, bro, get the makeup off. Like, stop.
It's no different than bands back in the 70s that would do stuff and they're like, oh, we're gonna go boycott those people. Blah 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 blah. Well, you just
but I think like Marilyn, like they took it to the next level because they put the makeup on, they did all the weird, like band member dressed up to be something that they weren't. Like,
well, what was going on at that time period? If you remember, that was the Tipper Gore. We need to put explicit tags on everything.
No, I get it. Like these were culturally relevant instances, but as far as the music goes, it's not going to live on.
Stone Temple Pilots. I mean, they had some good albums.
No, I like Stone Temple Pilots. But what was the problem? Like, Scott was Scott Weiland, whatever the fuck, he killed himself because he was a fucking heroin addict. Like,
no, you're thinking Alice in Chains. Scott Weiland plays for. He ended up being Velvet Revolver.
No, Stone Temple Pilots. He killed himself.
Scott Weiland? Did he really?
Yeah, he killed himself from fucking heroin. Look it up. You're looking it up right now. Yeah, no, Scott Weiland.
But look
it up. What do you see?
Hold on. Hey, look at that. So he died in 2015, which is but he did die of a drug overdose. But I just remember he left because he was Stone Temple Pilots, and then he went to Velvet Revolver.
Okay, no, that's fair. All right, he did eventually. I didn't think it was that late. I really didn't. Yeah. That's weird because that's 9 years ago. Wow. No.
Yeah.
But he did die. He did die from fucking stupidity, but like he never.
Right, but he did it well after Stone Temple Pilots.
He was an incredibly talented singer. Like that dude had a very unique voice. Like that, he never should have died from this stupid shit.
Yeah, I mean, look, how many of them died from? I mean,
no, but that's
obviously the reason. That's
the point, man. Like guys, we're like, look at this dude we're just talking about. What the fuck? Why did that dude need to die? None of these dudes did, man. Like they were so talented. They're so talented. That's my issue with fucking music, period. Rap, rock, metal. You're dying for fucking nothing. What are you doing? Can't you just embrace the fucking music? because there are bands who do it. Megadeth does it.
I'm going to play
Iron Maiden
conspiracy
does it.
theorist.
Slayer does it. Whether we like their genre or not, these bands do it. They immerse themselves into this stuff. And then you got
I am going to
bands.
play
It's dumb.
devil's advocate here,
Yeah,
or
no,
conspiracy
no,
theorist.
I
Excuse
love
me.
Devil's Advocate.
I firmly believe that the reason why so many musicians die of drug overdoses is because the the record labels let it happen.
Do
When
you
those guys
really
are
think
out
that,
touring,
seriously though? But like, do you
when
really?
those guys are out touring,
But what does
the
that
only people that
benefit
are
the
getting
record?
near them are the people that the record labels getting near those guys.
No, but
Somebody, they're not accidentally
how does
shipping
that
them.
benefit them though? Like, be honest. Be honest. Like, because I want you,
I
and I don't
think
want you
those
to say
guys get stressed out.
no. Hold
And
on.
this is me just off the top of my head. What would I do in that moment? I think those guys get ran into the ground on the road because being on the road is not fun. Playing is great, but being on the road like that is impossible. They put them on the road for 9 months a year, and eventually those guys get to the point where they need some sort of relief, and that just happens to be the one.
Um,
Just that is just what it is.
you know
There's a lot of
what?
guys who get addicted to heroin and make their way out of it. I.e., Corn, and there's ones who don't.
Well,
So
you know what? Um, I think that that's fair, and I don't know. Maybe I think we're just living in a different metal world right now because I go to Napalm Records and I observe the way that they treat their label. Um, and I go back to Burning Witches. Like this is my favorite band who's new. They're all female and they seem to be doing very fucking well. They're very healthy. Like things
well,
seem to be
there's a
going.
certain point. So I went and saw, I Prevail. I went and saw I Prevail a couple years ago here in Kansas City. And what I was shocked about, so they had Fit for a King opened up for them. They're a band from Dallas. They had them. They had Pierce the Veil, who's a SoCal band. They're kind of, to me, they feel more punk than metal. But anyway, and then they had I Prevail, which is kind of like the back end of new metal to this version of metal we have today. And what I was shocked at is how absolutely ripped those dudes are on stage. Instead of going to drinking every night or do whatever, you can tell those guys go relieve their stress by hitting the gym. The lead guitarist for I Prevail is a absolutely gargantuan human being. Now, what he's on to get that big, I don't know, but it's not the do the drugs thing anymore. I think that they're getting away from that.
No, it's fair. But the only reason I bring it up is because clearly, and I've seen them several times now, not multiple, several times now, and this is a band, in my opinion, who takes their performances and what they do very seriously musically. So that's why I bring up Burning Witches with the Napalm Records. You know, they're very serious. They're very professional when it comes to music. They are continually putting out new music as well. They're performing it, and they're flawless when they do it. Live. Like they're a great band, and I think that's important because what you describe is you're always going to get individuals who do things positive or negative, but I feel like, excuse me, I feel like we've watched bands kind of realize that what they're doing is not no longer, hey, here's your moment. This is your moment in time. Like this is your fucking profession.
Right. Well, so
You
the
have
way
an
I've heard it
opportunity to
described
perform
before,
this. Like you can do this for a few years, make a ton of money, and then disappear. If you don't have the creativity to keep it going, great. But if this is your moment, maximize it, perform it, disappear. And I think that's where we're at. Like we're not at the point where anymore where it's like everyone's a fucking drug addict or everyone's like fucking shooting heroin and we're dealing with the like late 80s metal band bullshit where they're like everyone's fucking high. Like we're not dealing with that anymore. We're dealing with
I
actual
think that there's
musicians.
enough guys, metal bands that have made it on the backside of addiction now that when they go on tour with the younger bands, I think there's more of a mentorship thing going on now.
Yeah, because I
Definitely
think I
the,
think
hey,
they've
stay away from
really
this shit.
realized like, hey, just be a professional fucking musician. And like that's real.
one way it has been explained to me is music is the business of introverts, and there's a
Oh,
lot
that's
of guys
that's a good point, man. I think that's a good.
who
I
live
think
that
that's a very
life
good point.
and they get in there, they learn music, they learn their craft, they get very good at it. And performing it is one thing, but there's a lot more that goes to being in a band than just getting on stage, unfortunately. And
Absolutely.
so a lot of them struggle
Absolutely.
with that piece. And
Yep.
so it goes from being the business of introverts to something completely different. And so how you adapt to that, and that's why and listen, we know you're a gym guy. I definitely think that more bands are looking on that. How do I stay healthy? I mean, there's a completely escapes me the name of the band right now, but they're a rock band, and I mean, their lead singer is abs and ripped, and
Yeah.
you can tell he stays in the gym, and I just think that there's a different methodology to it now. Um, it does absolutely nothing for the music,
They
but
need
it definitely
outlets,
does
man.
the longevity of
Everybody
what.
needs outlets, right? Whether it's the music
Yeah,
or not.
yeah, 100%.
I would say to go back. This is just me. Um, I would go back and say, like, if you're the type of person who seeks out to be in a band, you're a very unique individual from the beginning, all right? Because you automatically, from the very beginning, you're seeking community, right? You're seeking community because you want to seek someone else who does what you do. But then also, you want to offer something that you think others want. And that's the music, right? So that
So it's
doesn't matter the
also
genre.
so I have talked to friends about this. The one thing about writing a book and releasing a book, it is I have never felt more vulnerable in my entire life than writing a book and putting it out there, because you don't know what people are going to think. And I've mentally prepared for myself. I was reading
That's fair.
one guy in our corner had his Amazon thing. I was looking at the reviews, and one of them was like, it was a 1-star review. It was like, I didn't like this book. I don't enjoy sci-fi. And it's like, well, why'd you buy a sci-fi book, right? So there's going to be some idiot out there. But there's a vulnerability that goes along with it too. Music is exactly the same. Poetry, any kind of expression whatsoever, is going to have that vulnerability. Some people handle it well, some people don't. None of it does anything for the music though. And so, unfortunately, I think the way that rock and metal is going, we're going to be looking back on our stuff the same way our parents look back at like Led Zeppelin or the
Well, fair
Beatles.
enough. It's fair. But I mean, I
Yeah,
think the point I'm making is with this is like there are going to be tons of individuals, whether they're watching you and I talk or not, they're going to be seeking out community. There's going to be
yeah.
individuals who seek out people who are like them, and they seek out that either it's whether it's music, whether it's a different type of community. For the most part, let's just stick to community in terms of music here. It's like, hey, um, I like Iron Maiden. I like Matt. I like, Metallica. I like Megadeth. I like Exodus. I like whatever. I like Starset, like going and tracking into my daughter's stuff because um I think my daughter's taste is way more relevant than yours and I's because she's the future, right? Like she's an almost a 19-year-old kid who's just like, yeah, I love Iron Maiden. I love Metallica, but hey, Starset is what I fucking live and die for. Like
Yeah.
that's right. Like that's her future to her. Right. And I don't blame her for it because I'm like, I've taken her to all these concerts and she's seen it all. Um, it's different. And it's also
It is.
different when you relate to the individual making the music, right? Like it's hard for me to be like, hey, look, that's fucking
Well,
that's Giannis. Like
well,
he's the 64-year-old guitarist for Iron Maiden. Whereas like I can be like, hey, check it out. That's the 26-year-old fucking bodysuit wearing hottie fucking doing the violin bullshit for Starset because hey, there's 7 people on stage right now for Starset who are fucking hot. Like they're all great looking people, right? Like that's the difference that draws people in. And I'm not disputing any of it. I'm not saying, hey, Metallica is the way to go, Exodus is the way to go, Slayer is the way to go, Iron Maiden is the way to go, Starset's
Silk the
the way to
Shocker is the way to go. I'm
go,
just
the
saying.
shocker. Just
Shout out to
like,
show
hey,
Mystical.
buy in and support these individuals because without your support, there's nothing.
The uh the community thing, I think, and that was one thing, reason why who like people like Limp Bizkit did was big at that period. I mean, they were kind of sure they're touring again now, but there was like a flash where they were really, really
Yeah,
big.
late 90s, they were fucking huge.
And it was because people related to them. Same thing with Korn. All the goth kids and the kids with no direction kind of gravitated towards Korn. And so you're gonna see the same thing happen with every genre, and or with every iteration, like as generationally. And so as they go through, who they relate to changes because their struggles change. You know, you always see the thing about strong men create good times, create good times,
Yeah.
create weak men, blah blah blah. The same thing happens with music. It's one of those. Another band is going to make people relate to them because of their personal struggles. And if it was up to me, if I could make one change in music, I would keep the emotion and get rid of the Hollywood. I think when you started going to concerts to go see a show, I don't think that's ever been like Adele. You can go see Adele. It's Adele and a piano player on the stage, and she just sings her ass off, and that's phenomenal. There's no craziness, no choreography. Nowadays, I mean, there's a metal bands that still have like crazy stuff going on. It becomes a show as opposed to going to see a concert. And so, yeah, that's if I could take the Hollywood out of music right now. And I think if you took the Hollywood out of it, I think people's where they would gravitate to would change too, because a lot of bands are just that facade. Once you take that away, there's nothing really there. But there was a lot of that when we were coming up too. So.
Yeah. I mean, with all that said, there's a lot to explore. But what I would love for everyone to explore is this book, On Account of Wolves, by
Now, I will tell you something. This shocked a friend of mine.
Hey, Behind the Baseball. Let's do it.
It's the first thing I've ever written, ever. So, I think the second one would be the second one is a lot starting off a lot darker.
So you're going to write again?
I'm on this. I'm 12,000 words in the second one. It's
is that a lot of
how
many words is that? Is that a lot of words?
That book, On Account of Wolves, is just short of 80,000.
Okay, so you're almost a quarter of the way in. Okay, well, yeah,
but it's a lot darker. So
the next one's going to be darker.
Yes.
All right, so I'm gonna read. I'm gonna read On Account of Wolves and be like, man, this is great. This is very happy. And then you're gonna drop On Account of Wolves 2, and I'm gonna be like, man, this guy's fucking dark.
You'll understand it. It'll make sense to you when we get there. But
no, I'll get it. I'm just hoping, the people who aren't like you and I.
You just have to make a promise to me. Is that when you get to the Braxton part?
Oh yeah,
let me know, because I've like put it out there on Twitter and nobody has found it yet. There is an absolute
that's fair
home run that I put in there, and nobody's
gonna do it. We're gonna do it.
Yeah.
It's probably gonna be this week. That's probably when I'm gonna do it because I'm gonna just read it this week and get it going.
Yeah.
All right, bro. Well,
I do appreciate your time, brother.
No, I appreciate you, man. Like I love this because we're at like 48 hours right now. This is
3 hours and 45 minutes or something. Like we've been just rambling about everything.
This is how it should be. And you know what? I knew it would be like this because when I knew that you were a recruiter, I'm like, this dude can talk.
Got to talk. Got to have the gift of gab.
Because if he couldn't talk, he couldn't do this. And yes. that is the great point. All right, bro. I appreciate you. So you got On Account of Wolves. Please go buy this man's book. If you've made it this far, do it. And
Kindle, paperback, hardcover on Amazon.
You heard it right there. All right, man. There you go. All right, bro. Appreciate you.
Hey, appreciate you, man. Have a good one.
You as well.